Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So Caroline will be with us for Jared versus Joe today at 5 o'clock. And as of right now, I am in the midst of trying to convince Caroline to adopt an Australian Shepherd puppy from Wags and Walks, Nashville. Ian, they've got a litter of 5 adorable Australian, I guess they're mixed, Australian Shepherd mixes.
Yeah, don't tell my wife either.
So we have an Australian Shepherd. You know, we have an Australian Shepherd and a pug. We have an Australian Shepherd. We love her. And, I mean, these are like the 5 most adorable Australian Shepherd puppies I have ever seen in my life. And, again, having a baby and already having an Australian Shepherd and a puppy, we can't take on but if we could, we would. So I am trying to convince Caroline. So if you are interested in an Australian Shepherd puppy, go to the Wags and Walks Nashville Instagram where the puppies are up there. And in all seriousness, like an Australian Shepherd's one of the smartest dogs I've ever owned in my life. So keep that in mind. But I am currently in the midst of trying to convince Caroline to adopt one. Combine day number 2. And we woke up to some news today. And the news is that the Titans are giving Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. And the one thing that I love about the Combine is everybody really just wants to know when it comes to the Combine, what are they going to do, Jared? What are they going to do? What are they going to do? And the truth is, at the Combine is where they get a lot of that stuff done. That's where teams talk to agents about free agents. That's where teams talk to agents about their own free agents. That's where teams really decide, cement and hammer down, boy, we really like this Abdul Carter. That's where they do it. They do it at the Combine. So they don't know for the most part what they're going to do. But with this, I can tell you what they're going to do. They are going to move on from Harold Landry one way or another, and they are going to draft at least one edge rusher. That's it. Jared, what are they going to do? They're moving on from Harold Landry's $17.5 million salary. They are not going to go down the pay cut road with him. He will either, one way or another, he will not be a Titan next year. And they're going to draft at least one edge rusher. Now, I didn't say they were going to draft Abdul Carter with the first pick, which is probably what many of you think when I say they're drafting an edge rusher. But yesterday, in multiple occasions, Mike Borgonzi went out of his way to highlight the edge rusher position as one of the deepest positions in this draft, saying that it's deep at edge rusher, it's deep at running back, and it's deep at tight end. Multiple times, he went on with Mike Florio, and he said very deep on the defensive line, specifically at edge rusher. And yesterday, and I heard Joe Rexrode categorize this as fangirling, because after spending 2 years complaining about everything that the Titans general manager was doing wrong, that everybody told me, no, Jared, you don't understand. It's okay to go into the draft without having a starting tackle. It's okay, Jared, to have a 270-pound center. It's okay to skip the Senior Bowl. It's okay to take vacations before the draft. It's okay. After 2 years of that, I finally heard from a general manager who seems to be putting the work in that is required to be a good general manager, and all of a sudden that's fangirling. Sorry, I like it when my football team is run by people who know what they're doing. But I see what Mike Borgonzi is doing, and it makes sense. And I used the Washington Commanders as the example yesterday. And I've used them as the example because they very quickly went from a terrible, terrible team with a terrible, terrible quarterback to a solid team with a very promising young quarterback. And everybody thinks the only reason the Washington Commanders are any good is because they drafted Jaden Daniels with the second overall pick. And Jaden Daniels looks like a special player, but that's not the only reason why they're good. The Washington Commanders last year signed 23 free agents for an average of $5 million per free agent, which means Harold Landry's $17.5 million salary represents 3.5 players. Add in Arden Key, who is infinitely more worthless than Harold Landry. And that's basically 5 to 6 free agents you can add that are real players. Not 5 bums, but 5 players that can start, including edge rushers. Harold Landry, 9 sacks last year for $17.5 million. The Washington Commanders signed Dante Fowler Jr. for $3.25 million, Cleveland Ferrell for $3.75 million, and Dorrance Armstrong for $11 million. That is $18 million, which again is roughly the same as what Harold Landry was scheduled to make. The 3 that Washington signed, again, none of these guys were just, oh my God, day one free agents. Can you believe the money they spent on Dante Fowler Jr.? The 3 of them combined for 19 sacks and 35 quarterback hits. Landry last year had 9 and 15. You see the difference? If Harold Landry made $5 million, then his 9 sacks would probably be worth it. But he doesn't. And I have been told, as far as Landry is concerned, this is not a pay cut thing. This is the Titans are ready to move on without Landry. And the hope here is that Landry will find somebody in the free agent market who says, you know what? Let's take a flyer on Landry. He knows he's going to have to take a pay cut no matter where he goes. But if somebody would have interest in bringing in Landry, then they can swing a trade and the Titans can probably, pick swap something. Oh, yeah, we swapped spots in the 5th, so that Kansas City 5th rounder for DeAndre Hopkins is now higher up in the 5th, and somebody gets Harold Landry at $10 million instead of $17 million. But one way or another, the expectation is that Harold Landry will not be a Tennessee Titan in 2025. So all you guys want to do is you want to know, what are they going to do, Jared? They have now told you the first thing they're going to do. They're moving on from Harold Landry, which also means they're probably moving on from Arden Key, which also means they're probably moving on from a lot of guys that have overinflated salaries based on their production. Again, 9 sacks is good, which is what Harold Landry gave you last year. But for the exact same money, Washington got 19 sacks. Again, this isn't about taking the $17.5 million and spending it on one player. This is about the Titans taking whatever money it is Amy gives them. Is it $250 million? Is it $280 million? Is it $300 million? I have no idea, and they won't tell you. But it is taking the budget with which Amy gives them and then operating accordingly to get the most out of the money they're spending. Not the way it's been done around here for the last couple of years, which was, sure, why not give Aaron Brewer double the money than we have to? Go ahead, give him a second round tender, because why not? They're not doing that anymore. And Harold Landry's the first example of that. I wish Harold Landry nothing but the best. I'm a little surprised that Chad Brinker, in the deposition that he did, the audio you can't hear, the video you can't see, Chad Brinker highlighted Harold Landry's play as an example of leadership on the Titans last year in spite of the horrendous season they were having. And he also doubled down on it in another interview he did where he talked about Landry. So I heard that and I'm like, wow, Landry, that sounds like a core piece, even though he's not the same player anymore. It sounds like a core piece that they really, view as a leader going, and immediately the new guy comes in and is like, he's out. So I wish Harold Landry nothing but the best. Harold Landry was a good Titan, and I will forever say that. But for all intents and purposes, his career with the Titans is over. He is going to go look for a trade. A lot of people have connected him with Vrabel. I have no idea if they'll do that or not, but I will say this. What they're going to do, if they're smart, and it looks like they are, what they're going to do is going to be a 180 from what they did last year. But that doesn't mean they're not going to spend in free agency. Because even though the Titans demonized free agency when they fired Rand Carthon, and I even pushed back. I mean, I even told someone with the Titans, I was like, I don't think free agency is bad. I think the way you guys did it was bad. Everybody is now starting to come to the realization they are going to be spenders in free agency. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So yesterday, Barry Trotz used a term that I have never heard used when it comes to sports. I've never heard this term before. Ian, have you heard this term before?
I don't quite think so.
So
makes sense.
It's perfect. It's a perfect term, and it is what the Titans, I am convinced, are going to do in free agency. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
We're trying to fill, probably as many holes as we can before the draft, and you're trying to see. At this point, you have a free agency board, you have a draft board. You're trying to see the depth in free agency and the depth in the draft and where you might be able to acquire those players. but you certainly want to try to fill as many holes as you can in free agency. And, we have some work to do on the roster.
There you go. That was Mike Borgonzi yesterday talking about, hey, we're going to try to fill as many holes as we can fill. We're going to try to do that in free agency before we get into the draft, which was music to my ears. Again, last year, the Titans went into the draft with no left tackle and no right tackle. They also went into it with somebody named Sadiq Charles at guard, and, well, we saw how that worked out. So I am thankful for the fact that this year the Titans have a general manager who seems to know, hey, we got a lot of holes to fill, and we're going to have to do it in free agency so we can get to the draft, and we can draft the players we want to draft, not the players we have to draft because we didn't sign anything in free agency. Which takes me to something that Barry Trotz said yesterday on our program. The Predators have all these picks and all these prospects, and they're going to trade away guys at the deadline in order to get more picks or more prospects. And at some point, I'm like, what's the deal with all these picks? Like, you're going to use them to, try to get one really good pick, or are you going to just take 50 players and just say, oh, well, maybe 5 of these will be good. And this is the term that he used when talking about doing just that, getting a bunch of draft picks and just screw it, lottery ticketing them and saying who's good and who's not. Here's what he said.
All those trade chips, those assets are something that you can use. You can draft, you can crop dust the whole draft and see what happens.
I don't think that's a bad idea, by the way. The Titans ended up with Derrick Henry by doing that one time.
Oh yeah, it's not a bad. I think Chicago one year they had just a boatload of picks. I think they took Kane and they took someone else, and then they had like 20 other picks, and they just sort of crop dusted the whole draft. Yeah, and then some guys stuck, and they turn it around pretty quick.
Okay, crop dusting the draft. I have never heard that before, but I kind of like it. So I'm taking that because I expect I expect the Titans to crop dust free agency this year. I expect them to be very active spenders in free agency. I saw PK put out a story yesterday saying the Titans are going to be more active in free agency than we think. They demonized free agency because Rand Carthon staked his entire career basically on one free agent class last year, and it blew up in their face when almost every single big ticket item they had got hurt. Snead got hurt. Cushenberry got hurt. Awuzie got hurt. Pollard and Ridley, they did okay. But so because of that, it was like free agency, bad. And I even said to somebody at the Titans, I said, free agency is not bad. Just the way you guys did it was bad. Free agency is good. And so when I see the Titans getting rid of Harold Landry's $17.5 million salary, and they're not even interested in negotiating a pay cut, that tells me that they are going to be very active across the board. Because that's what Washington did last year, and that's what I would do if I were the GM. If I was the GM right now and I were the Titans, I would be setting aside $40 million for Sam Darnold. Now, I know most of you think Sam Darnold sucks, so that's your business, but I'm saying what I would do. I would be setting aside $40 million for Sam Darnold and 15 or so for Alaric Jackson. I'd probably be willing to go to 16, 17 million a year to get Alaric Jackson to play left tackle, move J.C. Latham over to right tackle, and now I'm set at tackle, I'm set at quarterback. And it would cost me about $55 million, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, give or take, in order to do that. Everything else after that would be a small, short deal. And I'd still try to add about 10, 15 new players. But again, when a lot of people think of free agency, they go to Google and they just search NFL free agents. And they see T. Higgins and Trey Smith and these big names. And they're like, Trey Smith, Jared, we need him. He was with the Chiefs. Borgonzi was with the Chiefs. He went to UT, which, again, a lot of you seem to care about, and our morning show seems to care about. I do not care about that. But he went to UT, Jared, and so this is who we've got to – that's not free agency. That's being stupid. $20 million a year on a guard. It's not the day one free agents the Titans are going to sign this upcoming season. Last year, I think the Titans probably overpaid for Tony Pollard. They probably overpaid for Kenneth Murray. They absolutely overpaid for Chidobe Awuzie. So what you got to do this year is you got to wait. You got to wait. And then you go sign like 10 guys on these small deals. And they did sign some of these guys to these small deals last year. Think of Sebastian Joseph Day, Tyler Boyd, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams. Those guys were all in the $1 to $4 million range. Again, when those guys sign contracts, the key phrasing and how the reporters report it is up to. That's the way they say it. Up to. So I'd sign a lot of guys to up to deals, which is exactly what they did in Washington last year. And that's how you bring in 23 new guys. And so, again, in free agency, unrestricted free agency, and I don't know who all's going to be out there. And neither do they, because teams right now are still working through kind of their Harold Landrys of their own. Well, he's due $16 million next year, but he missed half the year with a shoulder injury, and he's going to be 34 years old, so we're going to release this guy, and now he goes into unrestricted free agency, and who knows what his market's going to be. And some guys hold on for dear life, saying, I'm worth more than that. Justin Simmons last year did that, the safety from Denver. I don't even know where he ended up. I don't even know if he played well. I think he ended up in Atlanta. So some guys will say, no, I'm not going to play for less. But I think you're going to see a lot of guys out there that are going to be in that $2-3 million range. Again, the Sebastian Joseph days. And I want about 15 of those, which again is what Washington did. Washington signed 3 players that would somewhat qualify as big ticket. Again, I believe L'Jarius Sneed made $25 million in cash last year, and they didn't sign a single player who made $25 million in cash. But Washington signed 3 guys with a total value of at or around $30 million, because I think Biadasz was like 29.5. So they signed Tyler Biadasz, the center, Frankie Louvu, the inside backer that really plays like a pass rusher, and Dorrance Armstrong, the pass rusher. Everybody else, again, 23 free agents. And these are guys that played key roles on their team. I mean, I was watching when they played Tampa Bay in the playoffs, and you know how they do it on Sunday Night Football, where they do the starting lineup. Jared Stillman, quarterback, Louisville, where everybody's like just going one by one. And because I know Washington, I was listening to them as they were doing the starting lineup. And it was like Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, just Jeremy Chin, the whole thing. I'm like, I had my hands, I think I counted 8 new starters. There's only 11 guys that play. One of them is Deron Payne. That's what you're going to have to do. But I think they're going to do it. Again, the term, crop dusting free agency. They are just going to take about 1 million little shots. You can take 1 or 2 big shots. Again, for me, I'm taking a shot on Sam Darnold. Some of you aren't. That would give you more firepower to crop dust for more players. And then there's going to be some guys you bring in at the veteran minimum at 1.2 million, or you bring in for 2 million that stink, like Jamal Adams stunk. That's okay. That's okay. But this way of building their team, this is what I think they're going to do. Because again, this is what responsible teams do. And when you see a Washington pull it off the way they did, and then you look at another team like Atlanta that seems to have good players, but every year they do something stupid, like give Kirk Cousins $45 million or draft a running back with the 7th pick and turn it over to Desmond Ridder, you realize, man, there really is a difference between the smart teams and the dumb teams. So it's not, I'm not talking T. Higgins and Trey Smith and Josh Sweat, and I'm not talking about those guys. And outside of Darnold, I'm not talking about any high-priced guys that you would have to trade anything for or anything like that. I am talking about, again, letting the dust settle. The first day of free agency, guys fly off the board. Jonnu Smith, $50 million. And then after that, guys start to rot. They sit out there like vegetables at the grocery store, just rotting right there on the rack. And that's when you come in and you say, 1 year, $3.5 million. And then you do that 10 times. And now you've just spent $30 million. And compare that to what you got out of 25 with L'Jarius Sneed. That's what they're going to do this year. 615-737-1025, which is the phone number, 615-737-1025. And I will just say this. I don't think it's only Harold Landry that's getting the boot as far as this is concerned. We'll do that next, and your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
The draft itself, right? I'm in the beginning phases of starting to look at players.
Yeah.
Trenches are deep, right?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
there other position or two that you look at this year and go, hey, they're pretty deep. I like what I see.
The D line stands out right
Yeah,
away.
right.
Particularly the edge. There's a lot of depth there in this draft.
Right.
I'd say the running backs, good draft. The running backs, I mean, good tight ends.
A lot of good ones.
Yeah. It's a good draft overall.
You do. You feel like it's a draft where we might get, and you might go, I actually might have 32 first round grades on guys this year.
Yeah, and I think the depth is good too.
Yeah.
Especially at the D line position.
Gotcha.
You really don't get a feel until you set the board, and we did that called phase 1 where we set the board.
Gotcha.
Broke the meetings. But once you look up at the board, you say, wow, there's a lot of players up there.
Boy, I tell you, there's a lot of players. There's a lot of players. By the way, I call bull crap on the idea that Mike Borgonzi has 32 first-round graded players in what is supposed to be an all-time bad draft. Now, that being said, he did say edge rusher is a deep position, and he kind of hit that point pretty hard. Today, again, it came out that the Titans have given Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. Folks, they're getting rid of Harold Landry. He will either be traded or he will be cut. He will not be on the Titans. And if that's the case, let me just say this. I think he's going to get rid of Arden Key too. And I think he looks at it. He looked at the draft board and he's looked at the free agent board and he's seen positions that he thinks the Titans are going to need to go get in free agency. I don't know, quarterback. He sees the positions the Titans are going to have to go get in free agency. And he sees the positions that they can use draft picks on, not just Abdul Carter, but that they can use draft picks on, and he sees a bunch of depth on the defensive line. So even if they take Abdul Carter, I think the idea that they would go back to edge wouldn't be shocking. I mean, I've seen Floyd do it. Antoine Odom and Travis LeBoy in the same draft. Now, John Thornton was more of an interior defensive lineman, but John Thornton and Javon Curse in the same draft, etc. But Key and Landry represent about $25 million in cash, and they could spend that on one really good high-end player or 5 average players. And it's like, well, I can get 5 average players for what I'm paying Arden Key and what I'm paying Harold Landry, and I can just go draft their replacements. Again, while I would sit there and say that the idea of taking a guy in the 3rd round, which I know you don't have a 3rd-round pick because you stupidly traded it away. Like, I know you don't have a 3rd-round pick, but you could trade back or whatever. But the idea that you could get somebody in the 3rd round who is an instant impact star is a little too aggressive for my liking. The idea that you could get somebody in the 3rd round who replaces Arden Key, yeah, you could do that. And so I expect Arden Key to be out of here too. And Chidobe Awuzie is like guaranteed half a salary, so that might be enough for him to keep his job. But man, it's starting to get juicy thinking about going out and getting guys for $3 million and $4 million and things like that instead of giving Kenneth Murray $9 million to be average. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's go to Michael, who's going to kick us off today. Michael, thank you for calling and waiting. You go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, just hearing Borgonzi talk about the draft and the vision that he has for the team, it feels like night and day from what we've been hearing the past couple of years from Rand Carthon. It just kind of felt like Rand Carthon just wanted to say all the right things to appease everyone and make everyone happy, whereas with Borgonzi, it seems like there's an actual plan that's going forward, and granted, we have no idea how it's going to go, but at the very least, I feel good about his vision for the team, not necessarily what he's done so far because there's no proof of what's happened yet. But I just actually feel good about the team going forward under his leadership as opposed to Rand, who was just kind of like, yeah, he was just kind of like yes man almost, it seemed like.
So here's, I guess, kind of the difference that I see between the two, and I appreciate your call. I listened yesterday, and we'll actually play a cut from this, but Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings. And he did a sit-down yesterday at the Combine, like all these general managers do. He did a sit-down yesterday with Ryan Grigson. Ian, you remember Ryan Grigson, the old general manager of the Colts?
Sure.
So he did a sit-down with Ryan Grigson, who is like their senior director of player evaluation, whatever. And the whole time, this Adolfo-Mensah, who comes from San Francisco, just like Rand Carthon did, he's talking about how Ryan Grigson is really, grinding the tape and how, I lean heavily on Ryan Grigson, and Griggs thought this, and Griggs thought that, and Griggs thought, and I texted a buddy of mine who covers the Vikings, and I said, is Ryan Grigson really the general manager there? And he texted back and said, no, Kevin O'Connell is the general manager for the Minnesota Vikings. And as I listened to that interview, I'm like, I think that's what Rand was trying to be, which is, okay, Anthony Robinson, you grind the tape on the college players. Chad Brinker, you grind the tape over here and do the analytics. You do this. You guys all do that. You come back to me. Which is why he had time to go on vacation before the draft, which, again, the way I was raised when it comes to football is, absolute blasphemy. The difference is between Vrabel and Brian Callahan and all these other guys that Rand was leaning on or whatever. I'm not sure that they really had any experience to run an organization and run it the right way. There was no Ryan Grigson in here who's been a former general manager working for Rand Carthon. I didn't have anybody like that. So I do think there was something to that. The other thing is, I'm pretty certain Mike Borgonzi's a grab the bull by the horns kind of guy. I heard a story that when Rand Carthon got here, Ryan Cowden, serving as the interim general manager, was running the personnel meetings. And Ryan Cowden went up to Rand Carthon and said, okay, do you want to run the personnel meetings now that you are hired? You're the general manager. Do you want to be in here and run these personnel meetings? And Rand was like, yeah, I'll just go sit in the back. I just want to observe how everybody interacts, kind of get to know these people. I'm just going to lay low for a little bit, just evaluate. You just go ahead and run it. Cowden said, okay. And again, I didn't hear this from Cowden. This is just what I heard from the building. And that Rand sat in the back, and then after a couple of weeks, Cowden was like, do you want to run the meetings? And Rand was like, nah. And I could never get over that. I'm pretty certain Mike Borgonzi's running the meetings. Again, the only time they talk to the coaches is during the lunch breaks. All right, bring the coaches in now. It's time for lunch. Also, can I get a side of honey mustard? Thank you. Indy Ben. Boy, his team's doing some stupid stuff. Indy Ben texts into the text line and says, you're acting like this franchise with the new acquisition of Mike Borgonzi is all of a sudden this smart team that's going to make all the right moves in free agency in the draft. You're setting yourself and other Titans fans up for failure once again if you think this team is on the up. They're still at least a few years away and have far too many holes at key positions. Again, Washington signed 23 players last year. Quarterback was a hole that they had this time last year. Other than Terry McLaurin, what hole didn't they have? Center, pretty important position. Pass rusher, pretty important position. Corner, pretty important position. They filled them. They're in the NFC title game. I have no idea when it comes to deciding, and this is, again, one of the key elements of being general manager, between Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. I have no idea if Mike Borgonzi knows just by watching it, okay, that's the guy. I have no idea. I have no idea when it comes to picking a center. If it's like, hey, we got Bubba and we got Bobby. Who's better? That he'll pick the better. I have no idea. But as far as the way he's structuring his organization, from just the stories that he told, it sounds like he's running the organization the way that I was taught you run an organization. And that's the difference, as far as I'm concerned. One texter says, it's asinine that you think a guy who worked his way up to being an NFL general manager doesn't have a work ethic. It's clear what's going on here. Look, man, I'm just going to tell you. There were multiple times where I could not believe stories I heard. Again, I was interviewing Brian Callahan, and I watched Rand Carthon clock in at 7:20 in the morning. You can say whatever you want, but I saw it. Kaharski wrote it about Rand sleeping on the plane. Rand talked about taking a vacation before the combine. Rand said in that terrible interview that he did after he got fired that he was planning to go on vacation the week after the season. Vacation? Come on. It seems more obvious to me than ever that Rand Carthon didn't do the work and that people were afraid to say it because they were afraid of people saying what you're saying, where you say, it's clear what's going on here. That's, I'm telling you, like, that's, I was at the Super Bowl and somebody told me, they said, nobody wanted to perpetuate a stereotype, but Rand didn't work very hard. Is what it is. 615-737-1025. We got your phones to get to, plus Chris Sanders. His reaction to everything he heard yesterday. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 and 1063 the game. Stillman and Company. Hey, tune in for our combine updates all week on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by the New Cumberland and by Boom Boss Pizza. The New Cumberland, Nashville's resort-style community overlooking downtown on the Cumberland River, and Boom Boss. Go try their award-winning pizzas at one of their locations in East Nashville, Spring Hill, and Murfreesboro. Boom Boss Pizza and Watch Bar. Eat, drink, watch. So somebody texted into the text line and said, I'm glad you're encouraged by how Mike Borgonzi is structuring the organization. Are you concerned, though, that it's still Chad Brinker's team? And I'm just going to tell you for right now, no, but I reserve the right to change my mind. I get the vibe that Chad Brinker is like the athletic director and Borgonzi is like the head coach. Like the athletic director is technically above the head coach, but when it comes to, who decided to sign that 5-star quarterback, we give that to the head coach, and the AD doesn't really do much. I don't know. Does that make any sense? I reserve the right to change my mind if in practice it gets all mushugany, but I feel good now as far as Borgonzi running the operation. Chris Sanders joins us on the program, former Titans receiver. Chris, let's start there, man.
Yes, sir.
What was your interpretation yesterday of what you heard from Mike Borgonzi and the Titans at the Combine?
I mean, it was just all basic stuff. I mean, it's all football stuff, and it's all things that, that a lot of the fans don't know. So I just think that he just said a whole bunch of stuff, just a whole bunch of things to kind of, tickle everybody's ear. But at the end of the day, I know they know what they're going to do, but I don't think they quite know what they're going to do yet. And the reason why I say that, it might not come down into the last 5 or last 2 minutes of when they have to pick. So it's just a lot of things going on.
What makes you think that? They have the number 1 pick. Or would they not make that decision if they were going to pick or trade ahead of time?
I know that, but I'm saying they have an idea, but somebody might come with a totally different offer and come up with something different. That's kind of what I'm saying. So, everybody's trying to speculate on what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Nobody really knows. I think they got a kind of idea what they want to do, and I think they're going to follow that direction.
So I actually agree with you. Now,
Sure.
I agree with you for different reasons. I don't agree with you that it'll be decided 2 minutes before the pick is in.
It could. What if somebody comes with a big deal with 2 firsts, some crazy stuff, and they trade that number 1 pick? Crazy stuff can happen.
Like the last time that the number 1 pick was traded was 2 years ago. And that went down the Friday before the league year opened, which is March 13th or whatever. So you're talking about like early March is when that pick was traded. I believe the Titans traded with the Rams on the last day of the NFL season, or the NBA season. Which, Ian, when is the last day of the NBA season traditionally? Like
NBA season?
Yeah. Like
end of April
5th or April, something like that.
Yeah.
The draft's like April 20th.
Right.
So it's not as if, again, when the first pick's been traded, it's not like a draft day trade. In fact, other than the Eli Manning thing, which happened, and of course it could happen, but my guess is that it probably wouldn't happen since it's really never happened before.
It's Jared. The thing about it is the number 1 pick is a hot commodity. And if you look at the Tennessee Titans, you can go with Hunter, you can go with Cam Moore, you can go with Abdul, but that's just one player. And I think that I think some of the teams are going to want to trade up and get that quarterback or get Travis Hunter or get Abdul, and we maybe trade down and build up this roster. I keep saying it each and every week, and on each and every show I get on, yes, you may get an impact player, but the Titans need to build this roster up, because if you get just one good impact player and then you have these other positions, that are suffering, I think that it can add some interest of being okay. Even if I know it sounds crazy, the last 3 minutes of them picking, somebody might jump up and say, we're going to give you this, and it can happen. That's all I'm saying.
It actually does sound crazy. Now, to that point, Chris Sanders with us on the program.
Oh my God.
What do you make of the Titans? I believe basically waving goodbye to Harold Landry today.
See, here's the crazy thing. Everybody's like, oh, he has 9 sacks, and he accidentally got those sacks. But those are 9 sacks that the Tennessee Titans are going to lose. And if you look at this roster, if I can remember, I think Simmons had 5 sacks. I think Arden Key had 6 sacks. But let me take you back to a couple of years ago.
And who never gets sacks, by the way?
Who?
Sweat.
Come on, stop it. I'm not even gonna go into that. But just like a couple of years ago when they lost Danico Autry, everybody's like, oh, whatever, and just kind of like we'll replace him. But people got to remember that that's 12 sacks that you're losing. So I understand the situation with Harold Landry. I know he accidentally got into some sacks, but you got to remember that's 9 sacks that you're losing. So if they do let him go or he gets traded, whatever, then now you're going to have to find somebody to replace those 9 sacks. So it's going to be a situation that I'm really going to be watching.
Don't you think that person is Abdul Carter?
Yeah, he's that dude, man. I'm gonna tell you,
So,
he is.
so if you were to
He's
say,
that dude. Yeah.
here's what I think they're doing. I think the
Yeah.
Titans are going to. I think they're going to get rid of Arden Key, and I think they're going to get rid of Landry, and that's going to be $25 million in
That's
cash.
a lot of money. Yeah, yeah.
That they can spend on 5 players at $5 million each.
Right.
So,
right.
and you can find an edge rusher that's better than Arden Key for less than $5 million.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you sign one edge rusher, you draft Abdul Carter, and now you're you've got $20 million to go spend on another position or two
That's a good
in free agency, and you have replaced the Landry sacks by going and getting Abdul Carter.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Abdul. I mean, I think this is just my opinion. I think he's the best prospect in the draft. I mean, what he brings. I mean, this is the thing that the Tennessee Titans need. They need game changers. They need guys that are going to impact the game, not just be in the game and make a play once in a while. I just watched him on tape. This guy has a motor. He brings leadership. You know, he's explosive. He's a technician in what he does. So just imagine teaming him with Simmons and Sweat and him being on other side or however they want to use him. I mean, he's going to impact this defense immediately because when you start picking guys at number one, you better make sure they're NFL ready. And I think that Abdul Carter is NFL ready. So I think that's going to be a big pick if the Tennessee Titans do that.
Okay, if Chris Sanders was general manager of the Tennessee Titans, who would be the number one pick and who would be their quarterback?
If I would say, I would go with a quarterback in free agent wise, and I know everybody's talking about Sam Darnold, Justin Fields. That's one of the guys. But if I'm drafting at number one, I'm gonna pick the guy. First of all, I'm gonna have my list down, and I'm gonna have a list of 6 guys. I will have Travis Hunter. I would have Cam Ward. I would have Abdul Carter. I would have Campbell from LSU. I would have McMillan from Arizona, and I have Shedeur Sanders. I would have that list on my desk. I would have the general manager. I would have all the coaches, and I would say, okay, take out a piece of paper, and I want you to, out of all these 6 names, I want you to write the name down of the guy that is NFL ready that can play from day one. Then all of a sudden, I would read all of them, and I'll choose from there. And my guy would be, I would go with Travis Hunter. The reason why I would go with Travis Hunter is because he brings so much to the table. You can put him at cornerback. You can put him at wide receiver. You can put him at kickoff return. You can put him at punt return. There's so many things you can do with him. When you talk about a guy that's NFL ready, I think out of all these guys, I think Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter is NFL ready.
Okay, so then who would your quarterback be?
I would go on free agent wise. I would try to with all the money that the Tennessee Titans have, I would get like a Sam Darnold or Justin Fields in free agent wise. That's what I would do, because the thing about it is, I know everybody wants to get Cameron Ward from Miami, Shedeur, and then even the guy that we're not really talking about is Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. So, you know, you just got to figure out what you want to do. I just think that, you know, if the Tennessee Titans want to win now, you got to get a veteran quarterback to come in here and lead these guys. So I think that I would go free agent wise.
Chris Sanders, as always on our program, a draft day trade of the number one pick.
Well, okay. See,
not sure I've ever seen that.
Every time you say it's a crazy thing, it always happens.
Like what?
Always, huh?
Like what?
I say some crazy stuff on air before, and it actually happens. I can't remember, but it happens.
That is true. Last year you said don't take Brock Bowers because they had Chig, and I had a heart attack.
Oh, man, get out of here.
Those were the good old days. Chris Sanders, as always. Chris, we'll talk soon.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you, man. Bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us on the program. Speaking of the quarterback herself, he says he'd go Sam Darnold or Justin Fields. To me, those are 2 very different choices. I'm just going to pretend that I heard him say Sam Darnold. Speaking of the quarterback carousel and the Titans' place on it, I am starting to get very, very worried. I'll explain. We'll do that next. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vandy basketball as Vandy goes on the road to take on A&M. 6 o'clock tip-off. Pregame at 5:30. Vandy basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball. Coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium now through March 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets. And by the way, congratulations to Vandy because they are no longer on the first 4 in or last 4 out or first 4 buys. They're off that with Lenardi. They're a solid 10 seed right now. So a win tonight would be huge for them as far as the bracket's concerned. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios and presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. All of our combine coverage and discussion is presented by the New Cumberland and Boomba's Pizza, and I am starting to get worried about the quarterback carousel and the Titans' place on the quarterback carousel here in the year of our Lord, 2025. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I am a big believer, if you listen to this show, you are familiar with the duck theory. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are, Ian, what is it?
Probably a duck.
It's a duck. And the New York Giants are going all in on Matthew Stafford. And it feels like the LA Rams are out on Matthew Stafford. I don't worry about what anybody says. Did you hear what so-and-so said at the press conference yesterday at the combine? I don't care about I don't care about that. I care about what they do. The Rams have had every opportunity to end this issue with Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford wants $50 million. $50 million is not an absurd amount of money for a starting quarterback in the NFL. Tua makes 53. Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, they make north of 50. This isn't like Matthew Stafford says, I want to be paid like Mahomes. He wants to be paid like Trevor Lawrence. Is that too much to ask? So when I hear, well, Stafford wants $50 million, I'm like, yeah, that's the going rate. Dak Prescott is making $60 million a year. Who's better, Stafford or Dak? You know the answer. So the Rams could squash this if they really wanted to. All they'd have to do is give Matthew Stafford more money. But the Rams aren't interested in that. So I see the Giants. And the owner has come out and said his patience is very thin. The general manager on the hot seat. Head coach on the hot seat. They have hired Matthew Stafford's brother-in-law, Kelly Stafford's brother, onto the coaching staff. That's like the oldest trick in the book in college recruiting, back before you could pay the players, was, oh, let's hire so-and-so's mom to work in the recruiting office. And the Giants have met with Stafford's representation at the Combine, and the Giants are in on Stafford. And this is why it scares me when it comes to the Titans. Because if the Giants trade for Matthew Stafford, clearly the Giants are out as far as trading for the number one pick. And as I have said earlier, the reason why I think the Rams are out on Matthew Stafford is it's not about the money. They know Matthew Stafford is worth $50 million a year. In fact, Stafford's probably worth more than that. But it's because I believe the Rams view Sam Darnold as the leader of the next generation. They know he fits the system with how he played for Kevin O'Connell, and he's 27, unlike Matthew Stafford, who's 37. So when it comes to Puka Nacua and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Kyron Williams and all these guys entering their primes, they can do that with Sam Darnold as their quarterback. They probably can't with Matthew Stafford. So if that's the case, if I'm right, and the Giants are all in on Stafford, and the Rams are out on Stafford because they want to be in on Darnold, well, now you've got a problem. Because if that happens, the Giants trade for Stafford, the Rams sign Darnold, not only did you just lose your number one trade partner, the Giants, but you also lost the top quarterback in free agency. And who does that leave the Titans with? Daniel Jones? Aaron Rodgers will be without a home, but again, at 41 years old, how excited are we about Aaron Rodgers? Gardner Minshew? And if the Titans operate like a stupid team, and they have operated like a stupid team in the past, though I'm hopeful that this new general manager will keep that from becoming a trend, but that easily could back them into a corner of taking Cam Ward, which is there's really only one quarterback that qualifies according to a lot of people that have done this for a while, as a first-round quarterback, and that's Cam Ward. Now, I don't know of anyone who sees Cam Ward as a traditional 1-1 quarterback, but he is graded as a first-round quarterback. So there's one guy out there. Cleveland's going to take him at 2. If you don't take him at 1, Stafford is off the board, thus the Giants are not interested in trading. Darnold is a Ram. So it's either Daniel Jones or you take Cam Ward number 1. Again, maybe none of this comes to fruition. And I am just worrying to worry because I have anxiety and Stafford stays with the Rams, which at this point I really doubt. Like at this point, and every single one of these insiders who's talking to the Rams and is just reiterating the talking point that the Rams have put out there, every single one of these insiders has said the same thing, which is the Rams really would like to keep Stafford, but they really wouldn't, because if they wanted to keep Stafford, they would. They just would pay him more. So maybe Stafford stays with the Rams. Again, something I doubt. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, who is trying everything to get himself as plan B to LA. I saw today he is selling it with, I will bring Devontae Adams with me. Maybe that happens and you can still go sign Sam Darnold and there's still a trade partner for the number 1 pick. But it's making me nervous. I saw the report that Stafford and Brady went skiing together out in Montana and that Brady is recruiting Stafford to the Raiders, even though Ian Rappaport, a consistent water carrier, has said that is not true. They just happened to be at the same resort in Montana at the same time. Yeah, just like Sean McVay happened to be at the same resort in Cabo as Matthew Stafford. At least that one was a little bit more believable. But again, if Stafford goes to the Giants, you've lost your top trade partner for the number 1 pick, because the team that everybody is circling is the Giants. And if they get Stafford, they're off the board. Now the Rams have to get a quarterback. And again, any of these guys who might be considering the Titans, Sam Darnold is number 1, but any of them, they would go to the Rams before they would go to the Titans. And that would be the right decision for them. So again, maybe none of this comes to fruition. Stafford stays with the Rams. The Giants get desperate. They give you a freaking hole to move up so that they can pick, at number 1 and they can take Cam Ward, because I feel like Cam Ward's their only other option after Stafford. Maybe that's the case. But right now, every day that this continues and every news story that comes out and every little detail about the Giants are doing this and Stafford's camp is doing that and the Rams, they want to keep Stafford, but it feels more and more likely that Stafford is going to be a Giant, and that is bad. So when it comes to the QB carousel, I am starting to get a little worried, because having the number 1 pick would put the Titans in a position of strength, and yet at the same time, I'm worried that all of the good options are going to dry up before the Titans can even make a move. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in. That's 615-737-1025. And I do kind of want to get into this story about Matthew Stafford. It's very odd. So we'll do that, because you're going to hear a lot of rumors and gossip, and a couple guys are arguing about we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Yeah, I mean, if things were rosy and Matthew Stafford was definitely going to be back with the Rams, it would have taken a lot less time for Sean McVay to say that, but that's not the case. He may be. It's entirely possible the Rams and Matthew Stafford reach a resolution on his contract that keeps him in Los Angeles. But to this point, they have not. And as you mentioned, there are other teams that have had permission to talk to Stafford and his agent for the last few weeks about what the contract would look like. And, you know, the Giants are one of those teams. I think, you know, there's been a couple that have checked in. So really we're at the point where Stafford knows what's out there in terms of a contract, and he has to decide whether he'd rather take whatever the Rams are offering or whether he'd rather go somewhere else and finish his career with a different team.
That was Dan Graziano. And apparently, as far as Stafford is concerned, and again, I think Stafford is kind of the key, you know, in all of this. If Stafford goes to the Giants, now you've lost your top trade partner, which is the spot that I think a lot of us would want to go. You know, we'd want the Titans to go to number 3 because you can still get Hunter or Carter. Hopefully Carter. You can still get Carter perhaps at 3. You're still ahead. But if Stafford goes to the Giants, they're out. Now you're looking at Vegas at 6, the Jets at 7, and you're going to lose any shot at Hunter or Carter. And those teams may not be willing to pay to get all the way up to number 1. So it may really hurt what you can do. Now, that being said, there apparently is some drama in the NFL insider sphere. So Jordan Schultz, who I actually really like, Jordan Schultz put out a report that Raiders minority owner Tom Brady recently hosted Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford at his home in Montana, where they spent time together and went skiing. Brady has been actively trying to convince Stafford to join the Raiders, and discussions are ongoing. Several teams are interested in Stafford if the Rams decide to move him, with the Las Vegas Raiders believed to be the most aggressive suitor. So Jordan Schultz put that out. Ian Rappaport, who, again, seems to, what would you say, Ian, about once every 2 months gets in my crawl one way or another?
Yeah, probably, maybe even more often than that.
I mean, I find Ian Rappaport, and I know some people that have worked with him before he was an NFL Network insider. I find Ian Rappaport to be the biggest loser when it comes to this entire insider thing, and I think most of those guys are losers. But I find Rappaport to be just the slimiest freaking loser of the group. And I will tell you why. That Mike Mularkey thing was a total example of how easily manipulated Ian Rappaport is and how desperate he is in order to be able to give off the appearance that he is so super unbelievably connected. Again, all Mike Mularkey had to do was pick up the phone, lie to Ian Rappaport. Ian Rappaport's all over TV. Breaking news! Mike Mularkey's got a contract extension. And then after Mularkey laughed about it because Rappaport's such a fraud, Rappaport was like, shame on you, Mike Mularkey. But Rappaport reports Raiders minority owner Tom Brady and Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford ran into each other at a ski resort in Montana, sources say. The meeting, unplanned, Rappaport puts in there, was not extensive or in-depth and did not include Brady, quote, hosting or, quote, recruiting Stafford, despite reports saying otherwise. Let me say this. I have no idea who's telling the truth and who's not. And apparently Jordan Schultz fired one back, basically being like, oh, yeah, so you mean to tell me that they just happened to run into each other just at the exact same time? Ian, what was the exact quote from Schultz? I don't have it in front of me. What was it like? I've got a bridge to sell you?
Yeah, something like that. If you think this was just by accident, I have a bridge to sell you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just, again, be incredibly transparent with my dislike for Ian Rappaport and how I think he does his job. And I do understand that a reporter's job is to report. By the way, Diana Rossini, it has come out that what she said about Aaron Rodgers and the fact that Aaron Rodgers was told to give up the McAfee show and to show up to OTAs, apparently that's not true either. But when it comes to Stafford and Brady and a recruitment and everything else, I guess technically that wouldn't be tampering because the Rams did give Stafford permission to seek a trade. So even if Brady is recruiting Stafford, I don't think that's actually tampering. I don't, again, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that's actually tampering. That being said, 5 years ago, when Matthew Stafford went from Detroit to LA, apparently Matthew Stafford just happened to be vacationing in Cabo at the exact same resort at the exact same time as Sean McVay. Now, how many resorts do you think there are in Cabo? I don't know, a gazillion. And they happen to be at the same resort, vacationing at the same time. Then again, Brian Callahan and I were vacationing at the same resort last year, so who knows? But you hear what I'm saying? So in each instance when Matthew Stafford has been available or been kind of available, he's happened to be vacationing with somebody who's trying to recruit him. And I'm supposed to believe that it's just an accident. Again, I didn't believe that it was an accident 5 years ago when I heard that McVay and Stafford bumped into each other at that resort in Cabo. Ian, can we get that Floyd cut from yesterday about making those trades at the Combine? Again, because the report at the time was Stafford and McVay bumped into each other, and then Stafford ended up on McVay's team. Now the report is Tom Brady invited Matthew Stafford to go skiing with him in Montana so he could actively pitch him on being a Las Vegas Raider. But Ian Rappaport, who, again, all you got to do, all Mike Mularkey has to do is call Ian Rappaport and say, I heard Brady and Stafford kissed, and he'd report it. Ian Rappaport says, that's not true. That's not true. They just bumped into each other for a second, said hi, and that was it. There was no recruiting. There was no nothing. There was no, and I'm supposed to believe that. Again, this is the Combine. This is what our GM said he used to do at the Combine. And again, the key phrase here, bumped into, play the cut.
If you are interested in making a trade and you know who who you want to trade for and the other team is, you'll try to passively bump into them, get an idea of maybe what they're thinking about a trade. And then if there's other players on other teams that you're interested in, you may try to bump into that agent, which is not legal.
Okay, so again, he's saying, hey, at the Combine where everybody is, you might bump in and they might bump in and they might, and I'm supposed to believe that Brady and Stafford bumped into each other at a ski resort in Montana? Really? Really? Like, Ian Rappaport, there's just so many things I want to call Ian Rappaport. And I don't have any issue with Ian Rappaport. One time Ian Rappaport did hit me up randomly, like via email, and was like basically asking for us to pay him to put him on the show. And I was just like, to do what? Like Ian Rappaport's going to come on and we're going to be like, all right, Ian Rappaport, what are you hearing about the Titans quarterback situation? I'm not hearing anything today. Okay. And we're supposed to pay you for that? Then there have been some contracts that he's put out there incorrectly that have kind of pissed me off. Again, I think there's a lot of copy and pasting from agents that he does. But this is treating everybody like they're stupid. Oh, no. They just ran into each other. Please. One texter says, I would get Stafford on a 1-year deal. Then I would draft Abdul Carter with the first pick and spend the rest of free agent money on the offensive line. Well, you wouldn't have any free agent money. And how are you going to get Matthew Stafford on a 1-year deal? Like, what are you going to trade? What are you going to trade the Rams in order to get Matthew Stafford? That the Giants, who have his brother-in-law on the coaching staff, are not going to trade him. You have no shot at Stafford. Move on. It's not happening. That would be like, no disrespect here, but TSU being interested in the number one recruit in the country. Like, Eddie, I love you, but I don't think you're going to get the number one recruit. It's not like, yeah, I'm choosing between Ohio State, Louisiana State, and Tennessee State. You're not getting Matthew Stafford. It's not going to happen. One texter says, has anything reliable come from Diana Rossini since she's gone to the Athletic? Probably not. 615-737-1025 here on the program if you want to weigh in. That's 615-737-1025. Oh, by the way, one texter says, NFL quarterbacks are not allowed to go snow skiing per their contracts. Highly sus. You know, I didn't think about that. I mean, I'm pretty sure Stafford probably has it in his contract that if he gets hurt skiing, you know, he's trying to go from $26 million to $50 million. He gets hurt skiing. That's probably the end of his career. I didn't think about that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So here's one thing that does bother me. If Stafford goes to the Giants, which I think is the most likely. In fact, there's a Giants reporter that is put out there. There are two options for the Giants. One you will really like and one you will really hate. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Did you know that Hiller has been in business since 1990 and is family-owned and operated? Jimmy Hiller was recently named amongst the most admired CEOs, and I know Jimmy Hiller because of the way he truly cares for his team and his clients. Hiller takes care of the customer on every job, every single time, and they stand behind their work with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, they will make it right. So learn more at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call that fish truck today.
He's announced that people are calling already. I don't doubt at all that they're calling. I also don't doubt that Mike Bergonzi is saying, others want to call, please do.
Yeah. He's not making it up, that's for sure.
People are calling, but at the same time, he'd like to hear from some people.
There you go. That was Charles Davis on Sirius XM NFL Radio talking about, I'm sure he's hearing, but he'd like to hear from some more. So again, the team that you should want the Titans to trade with is the Giants. They are desperate. Again, I watched the Hard Knocks last year. So Hard Knocks, we're all familiar with the traditional training camp Hard Knocks, where the guy's like, for all rookies, the adjustment to the NFL is a tough one. But it's a lot harder for undrafted free agent Johnny Joseph from nowhere gives a crap state. And then it shows a guy getting yelled at, and then, he's talking to his girlfriend in the hotel. I love you, baby. I wish all that stuff. So we've all seen Hard Knocks. We're all familiar with it. Well, they did an offseason Hard Knocks last year with the Giants. And it was kind of a behind the scenes of everything that's going on right now. The entire offseason. In fact, I'm not sure any team will ever do this again, because the Giants looked so stupid. But that's how you see that cut of the owner saying, if Saquon goes to the Eagles, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping. I watched that, found it very fascinating, by the way, and walked out of it thinking Joe Shane, the general manager of the Giants, was a complete and total moron. In fact, that's why when everyone was like, you're racist because you don't like Rand Carthon, I'm like, I just watched Giants Hard Knocks. I think Joe Shane's stupid and he's white. So clearly I do not care what color your skin is when it comes to how you run the football team. If I think you're doing a bad job, if you seem like a dope, I'll call it out. But I say this. Hot seat. Their owner has already said they're on the hot seat, said his patience is running thin, and they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a single quarterback on the team. So they have to do something. And a couple of the options that we've discussed, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, all have histories in New York. And it's not good. Like, they can't go get Daniel Jones. So according to Art Stapleton, and I only know who Art Stapleton is, he covers the Giants for, I guess, NorthJersey.com, which is their, NorthJersey.com, I guess, is their like newspaper up there, owned by Gannett, like the Tennessean is. And I only know about him because one of those fake Twitters got into it with Deion Sanders and said it was all Art Stapleton's fault. And Art Stapleton got mad. And I was like, I've never even heard of Art Stapleton, but Art Stapleton got all mad. Regardless, Art Stapleton tweets out, here are two scenarios of which I am pretty certain. Quote, the Giants will make a strong push that is ongoing to trade for Matthew Stafford. If the Giants don't get Stafford, Stapleton writes, I believe prior to the April 24th NFL draft, they will trade up to number 1 with the Tennessee Titans for their quarterbacks. Dane Brugler said on All In yesterday, I don't even know what that is. Dane Brugler said on All In yesterday that he thought 2 third-rounders might get it done. I think it'll be richer than that, maybe a 3 this year and a 2 next year. Would imagine the Titans would not want to move down past 3, which is why the price would be lower than some would anticipate. So my guess is if the Giants call the Titans and ask about moving to number 1, the Titans are going to ask for next year's 1. Like, the Titans are going to look and they're going to say, we want next year's 1. The Giants are probably going to say no. And I would say no, too, if I were the Giants, because I'm not sure the Titans have a ton of leverage. I think you flip those two and it's done. 1 and 3. And again, he's saying that it'll probably cost a 3rd rounder this year and a 2nd next year. Flip them. 34 this year and a 3rd next year. That, I think, gets it done. That, I think, is what the Titans would want, and would be willing to take. But again, he's saying 2 outcomes here. The Giants are either going to go all in on Stafford or they're going to trade up with the Titans. If they get Stafford, goodbye. And not only goodbye on that trade front, but also say goodbye to either extra picks and Abdul Carter. Because you can get Abdul Carter by picking him number 1 overall if the Giants are out of the trade market and you keep the pick and you take Abdul Carter right then and there, like you can still have him. But if you trade past 3, Mike Vrabel's taking Abdul Carter. Like if Hunter or Carter is there, Vrabel's taking him. And I don't even think Vrabel's thinking twice about it. I think he's taking either guy. I think there's a chance Vrabel is hopeful that you take Hunter or Carter, Cleveland takes a quarterback, the Giants take a quarterback, and he gets the other guy. And so I'm big on Abdul Carter. I think most people think the Titans want Abdul Carter, and I think you can still get Abdul Carter, although Cleveland is a fascinating team. I think you can still get Abdul Carter if you trade to 3. But if you trade to 6 with Vegas, you're not getting Abdul Carter. If you trade to 7th with the Jets, now we're talking about Tyler Warren. Because not only are Hunter and Carter off the board at this point, but so probably is Will Campbell and Mason Graham. And so now you've kind of dropped a little bit as far as a high-end premium position player. Now, I do think Warren is the kind of tight end who is a premium position guy, even though tight end is not a premium position. I don't think he's Bowers, but I think he's a little bit behind that. So again, what we all need to pray for, what we all need to hope for, is we all need to hope that on that ski trip that Ian Rappaport said was not anything more than a, hey, Tom, how you doing? Hey, Matthew Stafford, how you doing? That we have to hope that Brady works his magic on Stafford. We have to hope that the Rams somehow keep Matthew Stafford, that a mystery team shows up. We have to hope that Stafford doesn't go to the Giants. Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot. Where do you think Matthew Stafford ends up?
I don't know. I don't honestly, man, I got no clue. I would just be guessing. I don't know.
Give me a guess. You've done this long enough to be able to guess. Everybody's guessing now.
Yeah.
Let me ask this. Do you think it'll be the Rams? Or do you think that ship is sailing?
I don't know. Part of me thinks he's still going to go back to the Rams. So I'll go Rams.
If he was going to go back to the Rams, he would have gone. They just would have given him the contract now.
You think it would have happened already?
Yes. The Rams don't want to pay him. The only way I see him go back to the Rams is if the Rams really do look at it as, we want to move off of Stafford only for Darnold, and if we can't get Darnold, then we're going back to Stafford. But we're going to try to, wait as long as humanly possible before we have to play our cards. That's the only way I see Stafford go back. That's it. But right now, I think Stafford's going to the Giants, and I think that sucks for the Titans because I think the Giants, again, in order to trade up to number 1 to take a quarterback who's not really that good, it has to be a team that is stupid and a team that is desperate, and the Giants check both boxes. And unlike the Jets, they're picking in a spot where you still get Carter or Hunter as well. And again, the deal for me would be you'd give up number 1 for number 3. You'd get 34 or 33, whichever their second rounder is, and a third next year. And I'd be willing to take that. Ian, is that enough for you?
I guess so.
Make the deal. But again, we have to hope. 615-737-1025. So there's a lot of GM talk that you have to kind of read between the lines on when it comes to what teams are going to do or what they're thinking or what they're saying. And there's something yesterday that I heard that I'm like, what the hell did he just say? I want to get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Sam's year was so fun to be a part of. Just thinking back to this time last year and then onward through the offseason, acquiring Sam and getting him to trust in us to help him on that next step in his quarterback journey, and what a step it was. So proud of the year he had. JJ's doing really well from a standpoint of where he's progressed to in his rehab and in a phase now where he's got his sights set on that offseason program start date and getting off to a great start there. And then I can't speak enough about Daniel Jones. In the short time we did have him, I thought it was incredibly impactful for Daniel, but also for us to get to know him and allow him to kind of learn a little bit about our offense, how we train and coach the quarterback position. And he showed some real positive early results from that. So feel incredibly fortunate to be discussing those kind of names, with Brett Rippon and Nick Mullins also in our quarterback room. And, we're evaluating the short-term and long-term aspect of it. It's still early in the off-season process, but ultimately excited about, what lies ahead in 2025.
That was Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, when asked about Sam Darnold, went over everybody saying, man, it's all great, and we're still trying to figure it out. So Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is technically the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, who has more say, him or O'Connell? I don't know. A buddy of mine that covers the Vikings told me O'Connell does, but who knows? So he was on Sirius XM NFL radio yesterday, and he was asked about Sam Darnold straight up. So what are you going to do? You're going to tag him? You're going to trade him? What are you going to do? And I want you to listen to this. This is 2 minutes of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. And you guys tell me if you heard anything from this, because the hosts, after he got up, said it sounds like they think Darnold is going to go to free agency. Listen to this and tell me if this is what you hear. Play the cut.
Let's address the elephant in the room. You've got a quarterback that was in the MVP conversation, who's now either going to be a free agent, or you have until March 4th to determine a franchise tag, or perhaps negotiate with him after. What's the status of that situation?
I guess we like elephants, because I don't view this as a negative thing at all. When we started this process, knowing at some point we were going to have to make an investment in the quarterback position, honestly, frankly, that started when I first interviewed Kevin and had the conversation with him and how he sees the position and the different things like that. We knew we were going to get to this place, and all the advice a lot of people had given us was give yourself options, draft, but also maybe bring in somebody else who's talented, not just to be a bridge, but who knows. So we had that mind going into it. And Sam, obviously, Grayson was heavily involved in the evaluation of him early. We're talking well before that decision ever got made, grinding tape from Carolina, grinding tape from the Jets, even just to make sure you had the whole story. So we believed in him, bet on the type of player, the person that he was. Now we get to a place where the rest of the league sees what we believed. And so it's our, it's our privilege to be able to make a decision. And that decision could be that we decide to keep him, knowing that we have JJ. And look, JJ nobody's to say that JJ has to play tomorrow. He's extremely young, somebody we believe in. We know he's going to play for the Vikings at some point, but we have every option afforded to us. Really what you're trying to make sure, though, is you're deciding, can you build a team that's Final Four good? That can be on that last Sunday. That, watching that Sunday, I know about you, Griggs, when you're not playing in it, it's tough. It's tough to be there and to be in your house, and you try to work to get yourself over it or whatever you do, but you're trying to make sure you can do that. So it's a lot of planning, if I do this move and move this money here, I can't do this. And what does that mean for the team? It is that. And then, obviously things like the tag, do you want to have a 1-year block of salary on your books without the ability to smooth it? Or can you potentially do other things where you move it for assets? It's really we got a few days to figure it out, but those are the conversations we're having. And ultimately everything's in the goal of finding how we can build a Final Four team.
Okay. After he got off, the hosts, Bruce Murray, a guy I really like, and Kirk Morrison, they said to each other, yeah, it sounds like Darnold's going to free agency. What did I miss? Because I felt like they were like, hey, we don't have to play J.J. McCarthy right away. We could tag Sam. J.J. doesn't have to start tomorrow. J.J. will one day be our quarterback. But right now, we don't have to put J.J. out there. And again, we're just trying to figure out how to build a team that makes it to the Final Four of the NFL. And they looked at each other and immediately said, oh, yeah, no, clearly Darnold's hitting free agency. I mean, I think it's a great thing for the Titans. I hope, if Darnold hits free agency and the Titans sign him. But somebody explain, what did I miss there? Ian, did you hear something in that that's like, oh, yep, Darnold's going to free agency?
Not necessarily.
I didn't hear any of that. It was 2 minutes of rambling on about things we already knew. But again, like, where are people? And I'll tell you what I'm starting to think. I'm starting to think that the Vikings don't know what they're going to do. That the Vikings are trying at this combine to bump in to whomever it might be to see, hey, what would your interest be of tagging or trading for a tag Sam Darnold? You know, what do you think about that? And then seeing if there's a trade market before they have to make the decision on whether or not to commit the $40 million to Darnold. But I don't know how you could hear that cut and say, oh, yeah, he's going to be a free agent, unless I'm stupid. Let's go to Cedric, who's up next here on our program, 615-737-1025. Cedric, go ahead.
Jared, you have to be stopped today. In the 3 o'clock hour, you opened and said you don't listen to what people say. You care about what they do. But you get on here, man, talking about how great this GM is when he's done nothing other than speak eloquently at the combine. We don't know what this dude's going to do. And the track record of the brass of the Titans say that they're going to fumble this pick, just like they did the quarterback situation, just like they did the head coaching situation. In the 2 o'clock hour, let me go to that. You said the Atlanta Falcons have great, good players, but they do dumb stuff like give Kirk Cousins $45 million. But you're on the radio saying we should give Sam Darnold $40 million when the dude has a 61% completion percentage. He throws for under 50% in the biggest game of the year against the Detroit Lions. If he walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, what is he, Jared? He's a duck.
Cedric, I just said I wanted to give Sam Darnold $40 million, right? They gave Kirk Cousins $45 million. Secondly, I believe Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins can be compared and contrasted because they both played with the Vikings, right? Right?
Yeah, they both played with the Vikings, yeah. But
okay, who played better with the Vikings? I don't remember Kirk Cousins ever winning 14 games in a season.
Look at their stats, Jared. They both throw for the same amount of yards.
And Sam Darnold is 27 years old. Kirk Cousins was 34.
Jared, how many years
there's a difference between those?
How many
Because,
years?
by the way, I would give a 27-year-old Kirk Cousins $40 million right now to be the quarterback of the Titans. I would not give a 37-year-old Kirk Cousins that kind of money.
Jared, we can't do that, man. We cannot spend $40 million on some bum who has – you know how many years Sam Darnold has thrown for over 61% completion percentage? 1 year. That was last year with the Vikings with all those weapons. We can't do it, Jared.
He was over 51. He was definitely over 51% in 2022 with the Carolina Panthers.
No, he was not. Look it up. Jared, I will bet you a beer one day when I see you, dude. I'll bet you right now. Look it up. I got to go, man. Bye.
Okay. So I forget the first thing he said, but I took umbrage with that. Let's see. Sam Darnold in Carolina was 58%. So he was over 51%. The 51% is pretty terrible. But again, what was the first thing he said? Because I wanted to hit on, Borgonzi. Again, I have no idea if Borgonzi will be able to evaluate good players or not. But the fact that Borgonzi is kicking the coaches out of the evaluation process, I like. The fact that Borgonzi is comparing the free agent board with the draft board and saying, okay, we're going to fill as many needs as possible. We're going to try to do it all in free agency so we can go draft whoever. I like. The fact that Borgonzi shows up when it's dark outside, unlike Rand Carthon did, I like. That's what I'm saying. You guys take that to mean that I think Borgonzi is going to be the next Hank Stram. Tex Schramm. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that at least he seems to operate the organization better than Rand Carthon did, who was sleeping on the plane. And again, I would give a 27-year-old Kirk Cousins $40 million right now to run the Titans. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So there is a mark that came out for Brian Callahan. that I actually think, as far as like a water cooler discussion, a TV conversation, a radio argument, I actually think would be a pretty fascinating argument. And it will mean something to you. And it will mean something to the media. But it means nothing to me. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company. What is the game? Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Our discussions on the NFL Scouting Combine presented by the newcumberland.com and by the fine folks, and I mean the real fine folks, at Boomba's Pizza. The New Cumberland, Nashville's resort-style community overlooking downtown on the Cumberland River. Boomba's. Go try their award-winning pizzas at one of their locations in East Nashville, Spring Hill, and Murfreesboro. Boomba's Pizza and Watch Bar. Eat, drink, and watch. So as the Combine goes on, the NFLPA decided to drop their report cards for the 2025 season, which I think really means the 2024 season, but for the 2025 year. And the media loves this. I think the fans love this. And I do appreciate the shaming that often gets done with these NFLPA report cards. The Kansas City Chiefs were flying high, back-to-back Super Bowls. Clark Hunt must have been feeling himself. And last year, his players, F-. And I did get enjoyment out of that. And you can just flip the channel. And right now, the only F- owner was Woody Johnson of the Jets. And I can promise you that tomorrow morning on ESPN, Stephen A. will have something to say about that. Now, if I wanted to, again, say things for the point of saying things, which a lot of people think that I do, that I just make things up to get everybody all riled up, and so I go crazy, and I just make up stuff and stir the pot and everything else, and that it's all contrived, and none of it's real, that it's the Jerry Springer Show, although I did see the Jerry Springer Show documentary, and apparently that stuff was real too. If I wanted to do that, here's what I would take apart. Brian Callahan got an A-, according to the NFLPA's report card. 98% of Titans players feel their head coach, Brian Callahan, is efficient with their time, a rank of 7 out of 32. The players feel that Callahan is highly receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs, ranking him 14 of 32 head coaches in the NFL. And the only reason that matters to me, an A- when it comes to Brian Callahan, is because last year, the great Mike Vrabel got a B+. So everybody on TV tells me Mike Vrabel's great, and everybody Mike Vrabel this and Mike Vrabel that. 94% of the players felt that Mike Vrabel was efficient with their time, which was 13th. Again, 98% said Callahan. And the players feel that Mike Vrabel was somewhat willing to listen to the locker room, which was 19th overall. Vrabel, according to the PA report card, was 22nd. Callahan, 19th. Is Brian Callahan a better coach than Mike Vrabel? But here's the reality when it comes to the NFLPA report cards. I don't really care what the players think. I don't really care what the players want. I don't care. The things that matter to me, like if I were to really care about this NFLPA report card, it would not be what do the players think of the head coach. Again, I think the reason that the players probably like Brian Callahan so much is because he's nice to them and he doesn't push them too hard. Throw an interception in practice, Brian Callahan goes to the podium and says, "We'll get that fixed. The defense played great. That's what happened on that play." So I don't look at Brian Callahan getting an A- from the players. Well, the players love him. I don't care about that. That's like when TD said the players were upset that Rand Carthon got fired. I don't care. If you care that much, why don't you play a little bit harder for him? Why don't you win a little bit more games for him? The things, again, here are the different items that come out from the NFLPA report card. Treatment of families. The Titans, by the way, have a B+, 6 out of 32. Food and dining, B+. Nutritionist slash dietitian, B+. Locker room, C-. Training room, B-. Training staff, B. Weight room, B. Strength coaches, B+. Team travel, B. Head coach, A-. Ownership, B. What do I care what the Titan players think of the strength coach? Why should I care about that? The only ones that are worth caring about when they do these things are the dining halls and the team travel. Like last year, we found out that Mike Vrabel had the coaches sit in first class and all the players, God forbid, on that 1-hour flight to Indianapolis, all the players had to sit in coach. Well, this year, the Titans get an upping because the Titans, Brian Callahan, has put the players in first class and the coaches sit in coach. Yay. Did it get him to play any harder? Did it get him to play any better? Did it get him to do it? Oh, no, it did not. The only time any of this stuff matters is when you want to go after the owner. And for me, my problem with the owner is not the fact that she won't spend money. My problem with the owner, and apparently she will spend money. My problem with the owner is not the money spending. It's the constant firing and the I know best, and John Robinson fired in the middle of a season to hire Rand Carthon, who showed up for work at 7:20 in the morning and slept on the plane. That's my problem. All of this stuff, to me, it's a bunch of nothing. Again, who cares what the players think? And to me, this is a bigger discussion, really around all of football. But the players know what they do. So when it comes to, who's a good interior offensive lineman, I think Jeffrey Simmons would have a decent idea. But when it comes to who's a good quarterback, Jeffrey Simmons doesn't know. That's why I was just so beside myself when Jeffrey Simmons felt entitled enough to be able to go on a podcast and say that he thinks that the Titans need to draft Abdul Carter with the number 1 pick, which, again, if I was the GM, would piss me off. This idea that this player thinks he's got enough juice around here to tell me who to draft. But it's because you don't have any knowledge of this draft. You have no idea. What do you think about Imbo or whatever, the tackle from Missouri, Jeffrey? You don't know. So hush. So with this, again, I think this is, the report card is kind of the player's way of pushing back. When Cincinnati has a facility that charges everybody for meals, the players want everyone to know these guys are cheap. We want free lunch. Everybody else gets free lunch. And that I'm okay with. The idea, again, that Woody Johnson's an F- owner. I know. But when an owner's cheap or an owner needs to redo the lot, okay, fine. This is your opportunity to embarrass them and to put them on blast, and I'm fine with it. But the idea of me caring about whether or not Amy Adams Strunk provides daycare at the stadium, I don't care about that. The idea of whether or not the coaches like or the players like Brian Callahan, I don't care about that. I like Brian Callahan. I think he's a great guy. My girlfriend met Brian Callahan. She thinks he's a great guy. She's rooting for him because she thinks he's such a nice guy. But that doesn't mean he can coach. And that's what really matters. And so there's going to be a lot that's made about the PA report card. It's an easy thing to bring up. It's an easy thing to talk about. But I just don't care what the players think. Again, the Titan players gave Brian Callahan higher marks than they gave Mike Vrabel. And while I think it's a little over the top, how much everybody has made of the great Mike Vrabel, I don't think there's really much of a comparison as to who the better coach is. At least after a year of watching Brian Callahan be the head coach of the Titans. So, sorry, I know you like him because he's nice. It reminds me of Harold Landry, who is going to be released, who has been given permission to seek a trade. It reminds me of that. There's Harold Landry got up there and said, hey, guys can just be themselves this year. You won 3 games. Maybe guys being themselves isn't a good thing. Hell, the way I look at it, the way you played last year, maybe the players should go back to coach. I don't want to put the coaches, though, in first class. We should just stick Dave McGinnis in first class. Dave McGinnis, Jim Wyatt, first class. Everybody else go to coach. They're the only ones worth it. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Callahan, there's something he said yesterday that really pissed me off. Like, it really, truly pissed me off. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I think transparency is always best. I was very, very open with Will that we're all in this position because none of us were good enough, myself included. He was a part of that, but it wasn't just his fault either. And that's what I mean, that nobody was good enough. When you win 3 games, it's hard to pin it all on one person. You know, we have to do a lot of things better. But I did tell him that at minimum, there's going to be competition. And I can't answer what that looks like at this moment.
Don't know. Just be prepared.
And I told him, and my job is to continue to coach. And I'm coaching Will as hard as I can coach him. He's going to do things to get himself better. And ultimately, like any competitor, just control what you can control, come back ready to go, and be ready to compete. And you never know in this league when you get another opportunity. So let's say we end up taking a quarterback. There's no guarantee that he's going to play 17 games. And so, God forbid, you enter a game and not be prepared to perform again. So that's what you hope for. That's what players have to do. You got to be ready to go play. And Will just needs to worry about what he needs to worry about, and don't focus on anything other than you getting better. And I think that usually is a pretty good process.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan yesterday on Sirius XM NFL Radio talking about Will Levis and kind of what's next for him. And again, Mike Borgonzi said, hey, we only have one quarterback on the roster, so we'll give Will a chance to compete. And then said, we might sign a guy in free agency and draft a guy. But that's not what pissed me off, what Brian Callahan said. Brian Callahan was asked a question by Corey Curtis. It's very hard at the combine to hear the questions. But Brian Callahan was asked a question by Corey Curtis about Will Levis, or not about Will Levis, about evaluating quarterbacks being able to do things in the meeting room and take it to the game. Again, I don't exactly know Corey's question because you can barely hear it, but this was what Brian Callahan said to that, which I think was kind of a shot at Levis because, again, it was like last year, well, he's great in the meetings, he's great in practice, he's great in it, but then he gets to the game and he goes from Michael Jordan to Montel Jordan. So here is what here is what Brian Callahan said. And again, I think he was essentially subtweeting Will Levis.
It's safe for you to evaluate how a guy takes it from the chalkboard. What was actually time comes without actually being on the field?
That part's the hardest part, to be honest. That's a good question because there's a lot of guys that can talk it in the meeting room. They know what to say, how to say it. They can articulate their schematics. But the hardest part is can they take what's being taught and then execute it? And sometimes it's really more about taking it from the practice, from the meeting room to the game day. That's the part that really matters the most. Because guys can sometimes do the meeting room to the practice field, but it's about how do you execute under pressure and under duress when it's all live. And that's the hardest part to find out. Sometimes you don't necessarily know until you know.
Okay, so this is something Callahan has said multiple times. Because Callahan was talking about that, again, in evaluating a quarterback, saying you never know as their coach until you actually coach them in the games. Again, talking about Levis. What he just said right there was something he didn't say last year when it came to evaluating a quarterback. And here's why it pisses me off. Because Brian Callahan is basically telling you that the problem with Will Levis was in the meetings, he absolutely nailed it. On the practice field, he showed us. He was taking it from the meetings to the practice field. And in the games, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, he turned into this turnover machine. I just do not understand. Somebody help me. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. I don't. You can't blame me. Everything I saw was that Levis knew what he was doing. Except that's not true. And there's only very few things. There's only a little bit that people like me are allowed to see. And training camp practice is one of them. They are open because the league dictates it. Because the NFL wants everybody talking NFL football in August. How do you do it? You open up training camp practices. The Dallas Cowboys are practicing in Oxnard, California, and Ed Werder is alive. Ed, how did Dak look today at practice? The NFL loves that stuff. So the NFL requires training camp to be open. So I can see that. The Titans played Will Levis in the San Francisco preseason game, which was essentially a practice game. And Will Levis, in one drive, took a shot to the back trying to dive for the end zone. Stupid. Will Levis did not play much the rest of the preseason, if at all. And when they had a scrimmage scheduled with the Seattle Seahawks, 2 days of joint practices, Will Levis got exactly 1 rep in the 2-minute drill. Again, the way it works at the end of practice, the coaches blow the whistle, everybody gets on the sideline, so the Titans are on one sideline, the Seahawks are on the other sideline, and they line the ball up and they call out whatever the situation is. 118, down by 4, one timeout. They put it on the scoreboard, and they run it like a game. And Will Levis got one throw, and it was intercepted by Devin Witherspoon. And the entire Seahawks secondary ran over to Jamal Adams, and they handed him the ball, and everybody had a good time. Ha, 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 the end. And then I expected Brian Callahan to blow the whistle and say, all right, get back out there, first-team offense. Nope. That was it. That was it. The Seahawks, Geno Smith, they'd already gone. So Sam Howell and the second-team Seahawks offense ran out there, and they ran their 2-minute drill. And then Mason Rudolph went out there, and he ran his 2-minute drill. Will Levis got one rep, and it was an interception. And I even asked Brian Callahan. This is from August of last year. I even asked Brian Callahan about this very thing. About the, are you sure you didn't need more reps? Because I don't see where you're getting them between now and the Chicago game. Play the cut. How disappointed are you that when you get the offense in a 2-minute team period, it's one play?
Disappointed. Yeah, I mean that wasn't what I was hoping to get out of that period. I thought it just wasn't good execution all the way around, and we threw an interception to what would end a game, and so it's good coaching to teach off of. But very disappointed in that. I was hopeful to get better work out of that with the operation instead of just throwing a pick on the first play, and that's it. So disappointing.
Okay. And then I asked, I said, are you going to have any more opportunities? Oh, yeah, we'll have plenty of opportunities. And I could not get over that Seahawks turnover because after the Seahawk practices, the Wednesday and Thursday, and this was, again, when people thought Levis was good. When people said, we got our franchise quarterback, Jared. What if Drake May falls in the draft? Why would we take Drake May when we have Will Levis? That was the headspace this fan base and city was living in. And I went to the Wednesday practice and I went to the Thursday practice and I walked out of that and I said, if this was a game, you all would say Will Levis sucks. And I was told I was a hater, and I was told, Tony Pollard cracked one run at the very beginning of like the first day of practice. And the local media were saying, well, Pollard cracked a run. Yeah, great. They couldn't get a first down. They couldn't score a touchdown. They were, remember Ridley said that he wasn't running hard, and Callahan said, no, it was hot outside. Again, Brian Callahan is now trying to sell us on the idea that you never truly know about a quarterback until you coach them in the games. Well, here's the problem with that. Will Levis was giving us signs last year that he wasn't up to it. And Brian Callahan chose to refuse them. That's a problem. And here's the second problem. And again, I don't think Callahan has that much juice in the organization. If you listen to some of the things he said, many times he's talked about, hey, my job is to coach. I think there was even a quote in a Kaharski article where Callahan said, I'm not the general manager. Like, I'm not the one picking the players. I'm the coach. So he understands now, like this isn't last year where, we're working together and hunting together. And no. He's picking the players. I'm just here. But at the same time, if you're telling me you can't evaluate a quarterback and what a quarterback can do from a mental standpoint, if you're telling me you can't evaluate that now, then why are you even there? Like when you sit down with Cam Ward, if Cam Ward wows you on the board, are you going to go back and say, well, but I don't know if he can do it in the games because with Levis, he wowed me on the board and I don't. And again, I was so mad about that Seahawk practice because I felt like I was the only person there. I remember going crazy about the offensive line. Skoronski was getting worked by some nobody, and PT was awful. And then Callahan told me that Skoronski was playing great. And I was like, what? Bill Callahan looked at Skoronski during one of the practices and said, get your head out of your ass. And I'm supposed to think he's playing great? And it's just like, I just don't know if Brian Callahan, that's why I don't care that the players like him more than they like Vrabel, because even though Vrabel had his warts, and I am not missing Mike Vrabel when I say this, I just don't know if Callahan's going to hold these guys accountable. Because right now, he's still talking about Levis, again, in a roundabout subtweet kind of way. But he's still talking about Levis as if he was just amazed with how terrible Levis was last year. Dude, he was awful in 7-on-7, in OTAs. Remember when Jim Wyatt wrote that he threw a ball in the lake and the Titans got mad and Jim Wyatt had to go back and edit the story and say the ball bounced in the lake because Chris Sanders and I laughed about it for 20 minutes? Remember when Will Levis threw interception and no. Denard's defense. Really? Luke Gifford picked sixes in training camp? He gets one rep against the Seahawks in joint practices, the only joint practices you do. He gets one rep in the 2-minute drill, throws a pick, and you don't make him go back out there and get it right? That stuff bothers me. And when I heard that yesterday about, man, I was just shocked. I'm like, were you? Like, I wasn't. Were you shocked that Will Levis, Mike Vrabel told him, slide, learn how to slide, and he wouldn't do it. And then he goes in the first preseason game and takes a shot to the kidney. You're surprised by that. That really bothered me. Maybe I'm the only person out there that's bothered by that, but it's like, I don't need to hear Brian Callahan's a nice guy, but I need to know that he's a good coach. And I just don't see enough. When I listen to him talk, I'm like, I think he's self-aware. I think he can read the room. I think he's a good guy. I think he works hard. I think he cares about the players. I think he cares about the coaches. That's why I don't think he fired a lot of them, because, he cares about his guys. I think he is infinitely more genuine than the guy he replaced. But when it comes to business, I just don't know that Brian Callahan is tough enough. I just don't know if he holds them accountable enough. And now it's like, oh my God, who could have seen this coming? I did. I saw it in the joint practices. I said, if this Thursday practice and this Wednesday, if this was a game, you would say Will Levis sucks. I was the one that, instead of worrying about Traylon Burks' feelings, I said, maybe you should play NWI over Traylon Burks. But Jared, we have to. Why? NWI is a better player. 615-737-1025. We do have to get to some phones. Speaking of Levis, though, I am amazed at how few people actually, when it comes to the Titans, how few people pay any attention at all. And I mean people that are supposed to be important. We'll get to that. Preds fans, do not miss Smashville Live tonight at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 o'clock. See your Predator star players up close and personal, and also get autographs and pictures. The Preds player guest will be Ryan O'Reilly. That's tonight at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue. And if you want to win tickets to a Preds game, be listening to Robbie and Retro tomorrow morning for Preds Pick to Click. All you have to do is guess a goal scored. If they put the puck in the back of the net, you win. Be listening tomorrow morning for the cue to call on Robbie and Retro.
What you do at quarterback in free agency, might that tip what you're doing with the first pick?
I don't think that will depend. I don't think those will go hand in hand. We could sign a quarterback in free agency and also draft a quarterback as well. It depends on the situation. The places I've been, we've always had, older quarterbacks kind of mentor the younger quarterback. It's almost like another coach in the room for them, just to kind of show them how to be a pro, teach them all the little things about protection and just how to study opponents. That would probably be a priority for us if we did end up drafting a quarterback.
There you go. That was Mike Borgonzi talking about, hey, we might be able to sign a quarterback and draft a quarterback. And, when we got a younger quarterback, we want to have an older quarterback. I mean, if they sign Sam Darnold, they're not going to draft a quarterback with the number 1 pick. I think that's the question Paul was asking. And now, look, if they sign Daniel Jones, they probably will draft a quarterback with the number 1 pick. They might draft a quarterback with the number 1 pick. They sign Mac Jones, kind of same thing. But I was listening yesterday. I saw a YouTube video. I say I was listening. I really wasn't. I saw a YouTube video. This Rich Eisen show. Now, Ian, I don't even know what channel the Rich Eisen show is on.
I believe it's
what?
I think it's Roku channel or something, right?
So I was going to say what channel on the radio it's on, because it is a radio show, but it is a radio show that's on, to your point, the Roku channel, which, again,
I've never heard it on the radio.
I don't even know what channel that is. But Rich Eisen has a show, and somehow he gets good people on the show. And I saw what Rich Eisen thinks about the Titans and the number 1 pick. And I clicked it because I was like, let's see what Rich Eisen has to say. So I clicked it, and I'm listening to Rich Eisen talk about what Borgonzi said yesterday about how he's getting calls on the number 1 pick and whatever. And then Rich Eisen laid this on the line. And before we play this cut, I just want you all to know, the reason I think this is so wild is because Rich Eisen, the NFL has the draft on NFL Network, and their lead draft host is Rich Eisen. He has been their lead draft host, I believe, since the inception of the network. He is their number 1 guy at NFL Network. Again, I understand the Titans aren't very popular, but this isn't like it's ESPN and he's Stephen A. Smith and has to worry about basketball too. This isn't like he used to be a sports center anchor and there's baseball and there's hockey and it's 1 of 32. And he's the lead draft host for the NFL draft, which again will have the Tennessee Titans picking number 1. And here was Rich Eisen's assessment of the Titans' options with the number 1 pick.
The question is,
should they move it?
What do they think of Will Levis? That's the end of the story. What the Tennessee Titans do with the first overall selection is a window into their evaluation of Will Levis. Period. End of story. And you could sit there and go, well, it's really an evaluation of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Okay, because Will Levis was not a first-round draft choice. This is now it's rubber meeting the road right now, pretty much on Will Levis. And you could start the clock again with another year of contractual control on a kid. And is that player not as good as Will Levis? Okay, we'll take Abdul Carter. Or we'll trade the draft choice and we'll figure out the quarterback another time. And they could do that in free agency. I cannot wait to see these puzzle pieces land.
What? Excuse me. Rich Eisen says this again, like a preacher talking to the congregation. And Rich is like Dan Patrick. He's got to have all these producers that all chime in all the time. Like Rich's producer, he's like, the number 1 question surrounding the Tennessee Titans with this pick. And the producer's like, are they going to trade it? Which I think is a pretty good question. And Rich just completely ignores him and is like, what do they think of Will Levis? That is the question. It's like Shakespeare. QB or not QB? That is the question. And like Rich Eisen, again, he's pretty plugged into football. Granted, probably doesn't pay a lot of attention to the Titans, but he's pretty plugged in as far as keeping up with football. It's his job. And he thinks there's a shot that the Titans might actually still believe in Will Levis, which makes me wonder, are the rest of the people out there really that stupid? Like, the way I look at it is the Titans benched Will Levis for Mason freaking Rudolph. And they didn't go back. This isn't like how Carolina gave Bryce Young a couple of games off, put in Andy Dalton, and then went back to Bryce Young, and Bryce at the end of the year was doing well. And I mean, they benched Will Levis for Mason Rudolph, and they didn't go back. They have the number 1 pick in large part because Will Levis was abominable last year. They've moved on. The general manager that picked him fired. And Rich Eisen is sitting there saying, what do they still think about Will Levis? Do people really wonder what the Titans think of Will Levis? They've moved on. They're done. They're going to get rid of him, just like everybody gets rid of these young guys. And Mike Borgonzi made it obvious yesterday when saying, we could sign a quarterback and draft a quarterback. They go get 2 quarterbacks. Will Levis will not be on the Titans next year. This is what you do in the NFL, is once you're done with a guy, you move on. Desmond Ridder, they moved on. Kenny Pickett, they moved on. Sam Howell, they moved on. Once you're done with a guy, you move on. That's what's going to happen here. Instead, Rich Eisen. I mean, they're going to get there on draft night. The Titans are going to give Sam Darnold $120 million, and on draft night, Rich Eisen's going to be sitting there saying, Kurt Warner, Daniel Jeremiah, what do they think of Will Levis still? That ship has sailed. Unbelievable. One texter into the text line, Gunner says, we better hope that it's not just Will Levis being able to turn it on in the games. Can you imagine how bad the Titans and Callahan will look if Levis goes somewhere else and that talent exploded? Yeah, I mean, it would be a bad look. One texter says, come on, Jared. We all know you miss Coach Vrabel. I mean, here's the thing about Vrabel. Once you give Vrabel the power to run the operation, you're now beholden to Vrabel's personnel skills, of which I don't think he has any. On top of it, Vrabel's coaching staff hires were a train wreck. It was time. Again, I like Vrabel. I think Vrabel's a good coach. I think Vrabel is very much an overrated coach. Do not miss Vrabel. One text says, was Tony Dungy tough enough too? I don't know, but Tony Dungy didn't coach that team. Peyton Manning coached that team. Floyd told me that he went to practice one time, and Peyton was out there directing everybody where to go. Again, I couldn't speak on Tony Dungy because I never covered Tony Dungy. I covered Brian Callahan. Where again, it is my job every day to know what's going on and to hear the press conferences and to go to the practices when they're. And I'm telling you, like, I don't think Brian Callahan's tough enough on those guys. 615-737-1025, more of your phones, plus a reality that I think some Titans fans aren't convinced is happening yet. It's happening. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
I'm really interested to see, like, is there a team out there that looks at him and looks at his salary and says, yeah, we'll give it a shot for another year and see how that goes? And is there a situation that he could go to that's realistic, that number one can afford his services, number two is willing to give up something for him, and number three is set on defense to the point where he could come in and be an effective player because there's so much depth and so much, star power across the line. Like, I thought of the Lions immediately. Like, if Aiden Hutchinson is back next year, like Landry on the other side, what would that look like?
That was Robbie Stanley earlier today. Again, the news came out that the Titans have given Harold Landry permission to seek a trade. And then there's some talk about, well, maybe the Titans will let Landry go look for a trade. And if there's not a trade out there at a $17.5 million salary, then the Titans could go back to the drawing board with Landry and he could take a pay cut. And I am told that is, in fact, not on the table. I have been told by a source the Titans are ready to move on and are not interested in renegotiating his $17.5 million salary. Harold Landry is gone. But I do have something that might make you at least get a little excited, especially if you don't like Sam Darnold like I do. I believe the Titans are going to ask Arden Key for his release. And it would not surprise me if they throw some other guys in there too. Chidobe Awuzie is an obvious cut candidate. The problem is when it comes to Awuzie, he's got $7 million guaranteed of a $12 million salary. So you save $5 million, but you eat $7 million. And is that $5 million worth it? So I don't know. I don't think there'd be a taker to trade for Awuzie, but we'll push that to the side for a second. Landry's gone, $17.5 million. Arden Key's gone, $7 million. As of right now, the Titans, according to Over the Cap, spent $258 million last year. Right now, they have committed $179 million for this upcoming season, a difference of $77 million. And that is to get to what they spent last year. It'd be nice if Amy wanted to spend some more money, but in order to get to what they spent last year, they would need to spend $77 million in cash. $30 million is the draft. The first pick's going to get like $26 million, and then the rest will, 34, 32, something like that. So let's just say $30 million. So that's $47 million before Landry, before Key, before all that. So here are the cuts that I think you make if you're the Titans. Landry at 17.5, Key at 7, Kenneth Murray at 7. I can go get another inside backer. Kenneth Murray at 7, Amani Hooker at 8. That gives you $86.5 million to spend to get up to last season's payroll. And it's not like last season's payroll at $258 million was anywhere near the tops of the NFL. I believe that was 21st, according to Over the Cap, in the NFL. So that kind of gets me excited. Especially if you can trade Awuzie and then you clear up an extra $12 million and now you're in the $99 million range of cash you have to spend. And yes, that will add to holes, but you can find a safety who's as good as Amani Hooker for a lot less than $8 million. You can find an inside backer who gives you what Kenneth Murray gives you for less than $7 million. And the other thing, you can absolutely find pass rushers that give you more than Arden Key and Harold Landry did for the $25 million that you paid them last year and we'll be paying them this year. The Commanders signed Dante Fowler for $3.25 million, Cleveland Farrell for $3.75 million, and Dorrance Armstrong for $11 million. That is $18 million. How much money does Harold Landry make? 17.5. So roughly the same. The three of those guys on the Commanders combined for 19 sacks and 35 quarterback hits. Landry had 9 sacks and 16 quarterback hits. You see the difference? So this actually gets me excited, the news that the Titans are moving on from Harold Landry. And I think there's another thing that we have to keep in mind. And I want you to understand this, that 9 times out of 10, when you hear over the next 2 weeks that somebody has been given permission to seek a trade, that means they're most likely to be released. Now, in the case of Matthew Stafford, that's very different. That is a very different set of circumstances. But it's not in the case of Deebo Samuel, for instance. He will be released. It is not in the case of Jonathan Allen for the Commanders. He will be released. And it's not in the case of Harold Landry. He will be released. So when you hear that so-and-so has been given permission to seek a trade, the only way that that guy gets traded is if there's a team out there that says, hey, we'll pay him the $9 million he's owed, and we'd rather swap spots in the 7th in order to take on that $9 million salary than have to compete with 6 other teams to try to sign this guy once he becomes an unrestricted free agent. But if you think the Titans are going to negotiate a pay cut with Harold Landry, that ship has sailed. The Titans have moved on. And Mike Borgonzi has said in multiple instances that he thinks edge rusher is a deep area of the draft. Jared from Spring Hill says, speaking of the classroom not matching the games, I feel like Brian Callahan is way better at the podium than he is when it comes to coaching on the field. Maybe he sees himself more in Levis than he thinks. Well, we'll see this upcoming season. I don't know if Callahan will be given the best hand to deal with. But, I mean, look, I don't think Vince Lombardi could coach a team that's run by Rand Carthon. That's how bad of a general manager I think Rand Carthon was. Now, I still have serious reservations about Callahan. And Callahan did an interview yesterday where he was just waxing poetically about his friendship with Denard Wilson and how much he relies on Denard Wilson. And I'm like, dude, I think you should have fired Denard Wilson. Other than the fact that they had the second-ranked defense based on yards allowed, they were a pretty crappy defense. And the reason it was second was because their special teams and quarterback were giving so many yards to the other team. So that concerns me. One texter says the best possible scenario is starting Will Levis again next year because it guarantees another top 5 pick. Yeah, maybe to you, but I don't think it guarantees anything to the people that are making the decisions. Other than Callahan would definitely get fired, Brinker might get fired, and Borgonzi would be on serious thin ice if they end up with a top 5 pick in next year's draft. One texter says, not that the Titans have big names, but what big name players do you think the Titans will cut or trade besides Landry and Key? I think Murray is questionable at $7 million. The real reason I think they'd cut Kenneth Murray and save the $7 million is because I think Mike Borgonzi is going to want to sign Nick Bolton. And that would be more expensive, but he would argue, hey, this is our leader, and he's better, and he can really run the defense and wear the green dot. And so I think Murray's out, and they're going to try to sign Nick Bolton. And I think Hooker's out because he's just unreliable. He just doesn't play enough. And I think they would freaking love for somebody to take on Chidobe Awuzie's contract. Like, if the Titans could eat $5 million and get $7 million back and trade him for a 7th in 2026, I think they would do it. Because who would you rather have out there? Old man Awuzie or Jarvis Brownlee anyways? It is 5 o'clock or approaching 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means it's time for Jared versus Joe, which is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and all of our discussion surrounding the NFL Combine is presented by the New Cumberland and by Boom Boss Pizza. The New Cumberland, Nashville's resort-style community overlooking downtown on the Cumberland River, and Boom Boss. Go try their award-winning pizzas at one of their locations in East Nashville, Spring Hill, and Murfreesboro. Boom Boss Pizza and Watch Bar. Eat, drink, and watch. I believe Caroline is out this week, 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means, Ian, you're in. How do you feel about that?
I wish I was a little bit more prepared, but I'm ready.
Okay. Joe Rexroad is with us here on the program. Joe said, by the way, that I was fangirling over Mike Borgonzi because I said, oh, wow, it sounds like they hired a grown-up to be general manager, and yet all of a sudden that's apparently now a bad thing, Joseph.
Oh, Mike Borgonzi wakes up before dawn and goes to work early. Oh, my God, this guy is amazing. Oh, it was fantastic.
That is the difference between the last general manager and this general manager.
This guy told me he gets up early and he cracks egg on his own head, and then he goes in and, oh, my God, he's like Rocky. Oh, it's amazing. This is great. I can't wait till they go 6-11 next year and you flip on them. It's going to be glorious.
This guy doesn't sleep. No. See, that's Kaharski. That's not me. Kaharski waits till Rand Carthon is fired and then puts out there that Rand Carthon was a bad general manager and he was lazy and he slept on the plane and he didn't stay at the Will Levis Pro Day. And that's not me. I said all those things about Rand before Rand was losing every game. I mean, I had serious issues with Rand Carthon and the way he thought he was supposed to be general manager as opposed to what an actual general manager does.
I bet
so you think that I'm all about the record, but I was on Rand's ass before he started losing every game.
I bet you're getting excited just thinking about Borgonzi and how much energy he's going to have on the plane, like how much film he's going to crunch just before he even opens a bag of peanuts. He is crunching film. I mean, oh my God, it's
good.
Man. It is exciting.
Thank you. Oh my God, how dare Jared Stillman want to have a general manager that works? Sorry, let's go back to the general managers that don't work. Those are the kind Joe likes. With that, it's time for Jared versus Joe.
Big discussions.
What's the deal with this quad?
Bigger arguments.
I was right. I had my finger on the pulse of this team.
It's so dumb. It's time.
Oh, it was the cap. Cap.
For Jared versus Joe.
For you, this is actually kind of well-reasoned.
Brought to you by First Horizon Bank. Big bank muscle. Small bank hustle. And by Pella Windows and Doors.
We make the rules around here now.
Now on Stillman and Company.
Let's get it on!
Okay.
Ian, you're in for Caroline. Lead us off.
Okay. Let's start with the news of the day. Harold Landry, permission to seek a trade from the Titans. Should the Titans have considered trading Landry at the deadline last year, or maybe not should have considered, should they have traded Landry at the deadline last year? Joe, you can go first.
Yeah, I think they should have. Again, I had a fantastic plan to bring Hendon Hooker to town. It would have been Jared would have had his quarterback. It would have been beautiful in Nashville. But no, seriously, I think that the deadline, the thing about the deadline, and in particular last deadline, is that the Detroit Lions were a contender, and the one place where they had nothing because they lost their best player on defense was at edge. So I have no idea what they could have gotten, but they could have gotten something. I'm sure they could have gotten something. So yes, if at all possible at the trading deadline, absolutely they should have traded Landry. And they would have gotten something, and instead. And by the way, I guess on a side note here, I just heard you, Jared, kind of going through all the reasons for your excitement, and with all the money, that will be opened up if they cut everyone. Like, don't you want any football players who have played like football? I understand they can go out and get free agents, and you made a good case for the Washington guys, but I like Harold Landry. He's a player I would still like to have on my team in my locker room if there's no better alternative for him and he's willing to take a significant pay cut. And I mean, I like Amani Hooker. These guys aren't great players. Are they a little bit overpaid? Yeah, but I mean, you make it seem like you're just going to cut everybody, start from scratch, and you're guaranteed to get better performance for cheaper. You're not guaranteed at all to get that.
Well, I think I can get the same performance out of a third-round draft choice as I can get out of Arden Key right now. I mean, $7 million for Arden Key is, I mean, he sucks. Now, but you
went through everybody. I mean, like you don't want to keep anyone? No one on D can stay?
Well, again, the guys I cut Landry, who they're going to cut. I cut Key, who they're going to cut. They're going to cut Arden Key. I cut Kenneth Murray, and that's because I think Borgonzi's going to want to go sign Nick Bolton anyways. And I cut Amani Hooker.
If he can do that, fine. Well, if he can get Nick Bolton, then thumbs up, you know?
Well, with the $80 million I'm talking about, I'm not saying, hey, you know what? Let's get the $80 million and let's sit on it and keep it and split it amongst ourselves. I'm not saying that.
No, I understand that, but you're also just assuming improvement.
Again, I think you can get an Arden Key for $3 million. You can probably get an Arden Key for like 2.5. You know, I am thinking a bunch of guys like Sebastian. The Titans last year, I think, had about 5 of these guys. Sebastian Joseph Day, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Tyler Boyd, like those kind of free agents are what I think the Titans need to load up on, are the very small commitments, very short-term, small money deals just to plug the holes, fill the needs, and then that allows you to spend on, 2 or 3 guys you really, really, really want. And then it gives you the option of going into the draft and drafting the best available players. That's the way I view it. I think there's probably 3 or 4 players you got to earmark and say, hey, we got to have that guy. And then you can overpay for that. Like I'll overpay the left tackle for the Rams to come be my left tackle and move JC to right, and now I'm done. Like I'll overpay that. I'll overpay Sam Darnold to be quarterback because he's the only one out there. But all the other stuff, like I'm getting out of the business of overpaying old guys when I can get the same thing from somebody else who I signed an hour before the draft. Like Sebastian.
Okay, answer Ian's question.
Okay. I think there's been a lot on Titans Twitter that was made about the value of Harold Landry. I think there's some belief in Joe. I think you're kind of at fault for why people started to think this. I saw somebody today say, I can't believe the Titans didn't get a second or a third from Detroit for Harold Landry. And I'm like, a second or a third for Detroit?
I bet you they could have gotten a fourth.
They would have driven Harold Landry to Detroit for a second or a third. And you're saying, oh, I bet they could have gotten a fourth. Based off of what? Za'Darius Smith is a better player than Harold Landry. And they got him, I believe, for a 5th and a 6th and sent a 7th back. The Detroit Lions did not become the Detroit Lions by wasting draft picks. That's how they became the old Detroit Lions.
Za'Darius Smith at one
Carlos
time.
Rogers?
I think you're confusing Za'Darius Smith now with Za'Darius Smith in 2021. I mean, that's Harold Landry is obviously.
And I think that you're confusing Harold Landry with Harold Landry in 2021.
But again, you're talking about a desperate team. I mean, so give me the point value of is that right? 5th and 6th. Give me the point value of a 5th and 6th and a 4th. It's basically the same, no?
Well, but they're also trading back a 7th, so then you factor that in. So, I don't know the exact point value when you feature a future 7th and everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's probably like
close.
A high 5th.
I mean, you're acting like I'm in fantasy land, and it's pretty freaking close. And
you know how many sacks Za'Darius Smith had last year? You know how many sacks Za'Darius Smith had last year?
4?
9.
Okay, so the same as Landry then. Great, so
yes.
They're about the same.
And I don't believe Landry had 5 at the deadline, which is what Smith had. Smith was a better player. And again, they didn't get it. So, I mean, should they have? Sure. Should they have? They would have gotten probably a similar return as the DeAndre Hopkins trade. So, great. But again, it's not like the Titans would have gotten truly anything meaningful of value by letting Landry go. And if they had any hope, there was resistance.
Landry had 5 sacks by November.
When's the deadline? The deadline's October.
Like it was like, right around Halloween. So he might have been 1 sack under.
You just got fact checked. You just got community fact checked.
I didn't. The Titans made their moves before the Detroit game, and the Detroit game was like October 20th. Joe. So
okay, Jared.
More importantly,
he is the one fact checking. You've talked to your boy.
I believe that if there was a trade, like from what I understand, Rand Carthon did not want to trade Ernest Jones. That was Rand Carthon felt like if they did that, then it would hurt the team, and it kind of did. And so he didn't want to trade Ernest Jones, but that perhaps the powers that be were more inclined to say, give us the 4th round pick. If somebody was calling and offering something similar for Landry, you don't think they would have done the exact same thing?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know.
So you're telling me that they should have made a move that I don't think was out there for them to make.
Yeah, you just said they should have too.
But again, you're telling me that there was
answer, or do you have a different answer or the same answer? I readily admit I don't know the conversations they had.
I mean, but you thought they could get a first.
I did. Oh God, a first.
Ian, what's next?
I did not think they could get a first.
Okay. Well, there's been a little bit of combine talk around Will Levis this year, or this, I guess, couple of weeks. What should the Titans do with Will Levis next season? Jared, you're first.
I think they should trade him. And I think there will be a taker. Again, I don't know for sure there will be a taker, but we've seen takers for Sam Howell in the past for mid-round draft picks. We've seen takers for Desmond Ridder in the past for mid-round draft picks. We've seen takers for Kenny Pickett for mid-round draft picks. Recently, this is kind of the way of the NFL. We saw a pick for Justin Fields last year. Is once a team gives you a chance and you fail, they move on. And for the Titans, if they have a young quarterback who's in here, then they'll need the young quarterback getting all the reps in practice. So I don't really see the ability for Levis to improve. And so I would rather have a much more veteran quarterback behind that young quarterback, somebody that started for an extensive period of time and is not as foolish as far as being an NFL quarterback as Levis. And then when it comes to signing a guy like Sam Darnold or a guy like Aaron Rodgers or something like that, again, I think I'd rather go with a real backup who, if they have to go in the game, I can trust that while they won't be able to necessarily win me the game, they for sure won't lose me the game. And that's kind of the problem with Levis is not only does he not win me the game, he also loses me the game. So I don't see any point in Will Levis being on this team next year. I would trade him and add that. I think he's going to make like a $2 million in cash. Add that to the money that I'd be able to spend elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't know about they won't for sure lose you the game, but those guys can lose games, but they're more game manager. They're safer. I agree. If there's any way to get anything, great. I have some doubts that anyone will get in there, but the reclamation young QB project is possible, and if you can get anything, I think it's best for both parties to move forward. Like this week, we were talking about it this morning. It's like, no one's ever said definitively, hey, we're moving on from Will. It's kind of like, yeah, we have Will, and he's trying to get better and he's going to compete and all this stuff, but like the conversation, Borgunzi talking about the combo of drafting and signing. So it's like, okay, so I mean, Will Levis is publicly now an afterthought. Just for the record, he is publicly an afterthought now, and I don't think that there's much benefit because I agree, he's not not an ideal backup you want. Just more of the safe veteran guy who's been around and can manage a game for however long you need it. So if they can do it, if someone out there actually has interest, then I'm all for it.
I also don't think Will Levis can have the persona of a backup in this town at this point. Does that make any sense?
You mean like he can't walk around town as a backup?
Well, it's just like, I just don't think that these fans can like live with Levis as a backup, and Levis can go into that locker room where he was the guy last year and he was a team captain and he was a celebrity and he had a commercial, and now it's like, yeah, I'm the backup. I don't think he can do that. That'd be like Jameis Winston going to Tampa Bay and being the backup. I don't think he could do that.
I'm sure he would prefer not to. I'm sure, and of course, I'm sure in his mind, he got a raw deal, terrible offensive line, and whatever else that he feels like he can be a great player in this league, and he needs a better situation. I don't blame any quarterback who's been with the Titans in recent years for feeling like, man, put Jared Goff behind this crap, and let me see what Jared Goff's doing, But at the same time, I think Levis's performance on its own was bad enough that's why he's an afterthought.
So here's the kind of trade that the Titans are going to end up making. Seattle received Sam Howell, a 4th rounder and a 6th rounder, for a 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder. That's the kind of trade the Titans are going to make. The Titans are going to trade Will Levis and the Seattle 4th and the Green Bay 7th in exchange for a 3rd rounder so they can get back in the 3rd round, but they're going to give up, 2 picks in Levis. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there will be somebody that does that and then comes out right away. And, Todd Bowles says, Will Levis is the backup to Baker Mayfield. And on he goes for the rest of his life. More Jared versus Joe to continue next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Big discussions.
What's the deal with this quad?
Bigger arguments.
I was right. I had my finger on the pulse of this team.
It's so dumb. It's time.
Oh, it was the cap. Cap.
For Jared versus Joe.
For you, this is actually kind of well reasoned.
Brought to you by First Horizon Bank. Big bank muscle. Small bank hustle. And by Pella Windows and Doors.
We make the rules around here now.
Now on Stillman and Company.
Let's get it on.
More Jared versus Joe. Ian is in for Caroline. Ian, go.
Okay. Some rules situations going on around the league this week with the combine. Joe, you can start with this one. Would you ban the tush push?
This is a good one. And I'm very interested to hear what Jared says. I've changed on this, and I do think that stupid, 15-minute situation in that playoff game soured me. That led to a very good Rob rant, by the way. Yeah, I think I would. It's weird because when this started, I remember the first time I saw them do it, I'm like, since when in football are you allowed to push your teammate forward? Like, it never used to happen, and it used to be a big thing. And obviously you still can't pull people forward. I mean, I guess I need to know the logic of you can't pull people past the first down marker or for more yardage, but you can push them. And if you want to talk about player safety, and I understand there was a thing today from the NFLPA, there's no injuries that specifically happened with the tush push, but I still think it's an incredibly dangerous play with all those bodies all mangled together in the middle of the field. and
helmets going at each other.
And I think just what happens a lot is you see like a tight end come in and just go helmet into someone's back full speed to get the ball carrier 2 more yards. I mean, that's not a player safety friendly sight, And so it's I don't say it lightly because it's also been kind of fun to watch it, and it's been fun to see some teams do little tricks off of it. But yeah, I think I'm going to go yes.
Okay, so I have heard people say this, that you can't pull somebody, but you can push them. Is that just the NFL, or is that NFL in college? Because I remember in the Arizona State-Texas game in college, the guard carried Scattaboo into the end zone for a touchdown. And I was like, man, that was hard work right there. So that's illegal?
But I think that was but I think that was seen as I didn't see that as a pull. I saw that more as a push. But yeah, it's supposed to be.
Okay. I would be against banning the tush push simply because I think you're targeting one team. And I don't like the idea of let's change the rules to either benefit one team or let's change the rules to stop one team. I think this reminds me years and years and years ago. The NBA decided the first round of the playoffs was a best of 5. And so the NBA decided in the middle of the season, when the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe were having a down year, the NBA decided to go to 7. And I remember when Mike Lupica said, this is just because the NBA wants to give Kobe and Shaq every opportunity to win. And I have no idea if that was actually the case or if the NBA just wanted more games and more TV money. But I just don't like the idea of one rule being enforced simply because of one team. That would be like if we banned the shifts in baseball just because of Barry Bonds. I don't like that. I mean, I think if the rules are for everybody and what's good for the game and what's not just what is stopping one team. And I do think there's an element of how come everybody else tries to run the tush push and can't. Buffalo cost them their season not being able to get the first down against Kansas City. How come they can't run that play? Their quarterback's bigger and I think just as fast as Jalen Hurts. How come they can't get the first down on it? I don't understand. Nobody else runs.
They usually do. They did screw that one up, but they usually do. I mean, it's a pretty high success rate for everybody, though. I mean, I agree with you that, especially with the Eagles winning, I agree in principle the idea of, the team just won it all. This is a staple of their game, so now we're banning it. If that's the impetus and if that's the motivation, I'm against that completely. But I do think there's a bigger picture beyond that. And I have to think that some people who want to ban it don't just want to ban it to stop the Eagles. They want to ban it because they think it's dangerous.
The one thing that I will say every time I see the tush push, and people immediately say like, oh, they should ban it. You know, a couple years ago in Minnesota at the joint practices between the Titans and the Vikings, Kalen Kaler, who was at that time your coworker at the Athletic Show, was writing a story about the tush push and was asking like all the coaches and all the players, everybody just tush push questions. And I went up to her and I was like, seriously, all the tush push questions? And she's like, it's a very hot topic around the league. And I'm like, here's what's going to end the tush push. When one of these quarterbacks gets hurt, when one of these $50 million quarterbacks ends up separating a disc in their neck, you're going to see the end of the tush push. So maybe this does get out in front of that from happening, but I just don't like the idea of us changing the rules for one team. You know, I like when Buffalo didn't get that possession in the playoffs and they changed the rules to allow both teams to get the possessions. I was a little disappointed because I thought it was so crybaby. Buffalo didn't get the ball. But at the same time, I mean, there have been numerous other teams that didn't get the ball in overtime in a playoff game, Kansas City being one of them, you know, in their conference championship game against New England. So that to me didn't feel like it was targeted for one team. This feels like it's targeted for one team, and I don't like that. So I'm against banning the tush push.
Okay. I like it. Good arguments, both sides. Very interesting situation there. Okay. Moving on to the next. Jared asked me this earlier, so we'll go ahead and get this out there. Where does Matthew Stafford land? Jared, go ahead.
I think it's going to be the Giants. I mean, at the beginning of this, like when I first heard like this little scuttlebutt about Stafford, I was like, the Rams were right there against the Eagles, who won the Super Bowl. And they're going to, with these great young players, with Verse and Fisk and Nakua and Kyron Williams, and they're just going to say, no. We're going to kind of rebuild a little bit. We're going to take away the quarterback, who's a very good quarterback. I just didn't believe it. Then I went to the Super Bowl. And at the Super Bowl, everybody was like, no, there's probably something to this. I said, what? Somebody who's very plugged in with the Rams. And if I told Joe who it was, Joe would say right away that this person is very plugged in with the Rams. Somebody at the Super Bowl who's very plugged in with the Rams told me.
Well, now I know who it is, but keep going.
Their issue is more so with Kelly Stafford than it is with Matthew Stafford. I said, you have got to be kidding me. They said, no, it's out there. If the Rams wanted to make this go away, they could. They just give him a raise. The same way they gave Aaron Donald a raise when he threatened to retire after they won the Super Bowl. So I think the Rams want to move on from Stafford. And I think the Giants have already hired the brother-in-law and the coaching staff. The Giants are desperate. I think the Rams look at this as the right time to get out on Stafford, get a premium asset in return to add to Nakua and Verse and Fisk and Williams and those young guys. And I think they're going to sign Sam Darnold. I think everybody out there thinks Sam Darnold sucks, except for these Shanahan coaches. You know, Shanahan had him. McVay, you know, I think he's going to like him. O'Connell, clearly he fits the system. I think their plan is to move on to Darnold, and they're going to get something in return for Stafford. And I believe the Rams do not want Stafford back. So right now, they're leaving the door open in case they can't get anybody good, then they'll go back to him and they'll just pay him. But I think that the Rams want to move on, and thus he will be a New York Giant.
Well, that all makes sense. I will go with, since the last time that Matthew Stafford, oh, wow, he just happened to be at the same vacation spot as Sean McVay, and we know where that ended up. And now, oh, my goodness, read Ian Rappaport's great tweet. Just no plan at all. Brady and Stafford happened to be together in Montana. Like, how'd that happen? It's just totally a coincidence. So let me just be different. Go with the Raiders. Tom Brady getting his guy tampering, getting his guy running the Raiders, still allowed to be a freaking average announcer.
That
It's
actually
really a great idea.
Well, hold on. With that, I do.
Go ahead.
Is it tampering though? Because the Rams did give him permission to seek a trade.
Yeah, I mean technically not, but I'm going to call it tampering.
Ian.
Okay, I was just going to say, as we wrap up here, who do we believe on this? Do we believe Ian Rappaport that it was just a coincidence, or are we believing other reports that it was maybe a little, funny business going on?
I mean, Jordan Schultz put it out there that Brady was recruiting Stafford in Montana. And that's when Ian Rappaport said they just bumped into each other. It was not planned.
Yeah.
There was no recruiting.
In
There was no.
Montana. Yeah, Matthew Stafford, they just sometimes just wind up in Montana. Yeah, what a load of crap. Ian Rappaport's Twitter account should be suspended for a week. It's so bad this week.
So I do wonder this, Joe, because you usually side with the scribes when it comes to people that are anti-media that push back, that say, oh, it's so disingenuous. The media lies. You as a true capital J journalist, you traditionally push back on that. Ian Rappaport, man, he's really starting to, he's kind of always rubbed me the wrong way. Ever since he sent me an email about wanting to be a paid guest on the show. And I'm like, to do what? Like, anytime there's breaking news, tell us what happened. Like, the only way I'd pay Ian Rappaport is if Ian Rappaport had news to break on the Stillman and Company show. But he's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He gets things wrong. He takes things that are not newsworthy and he positions it on television as if it's some kind of breaking news. And then I just feel like there's a lot of copy and pasting from agents that he does.
Well,
I feel like Ian Rappaport
problem.
is a very disingenuous reporter. And I have a hard time believing that McVay and Stafford just happened to bump into each other, staying at the same resort in Cabo. Then again, like I said earlier today, Brian Callahan and I this summer happened to just bump into each other staying at the same resort in the Bahamas. So who knows? But I have a hard enough time believing it the first time. I really don't believe it the second time. Again, Montana with Brady, really? And I think, does Ian Rappaport not sit there and say to himself, like, before he tweets this stuff out, does he not say, like, man, I'm going to look like a real jackass when I tweet?
Good to see you guys agreeing on this one.
I mean, look, I think Kaharski has used, for Schefter, information merchant. When it's all transactional and it's just, here, you're going to get this first. All the agents give you all the stories first. If you're going to just go ahead and do their bidding for them and put things out there the way they want it framed, to me, that's not journalism.
Well, didn't Adam Schefter, wasn't there a Washington Post story? Wasn't there a Washington Post story about how Adam Schefter sends like chocolates to sources? Like around Christmas time, he sends gifts.
I know other people who do stuff like that, which I've never really liked. But yeah, that was by far. There were way other things in that story that were more bothersome, including just his lack of understanding of how he's doing it wrong. Going back to sucking up to Belichick, this is a guy we can trust. Okay,
okay, this is a guy we can use.
It can be very rewarding. But the fans, again, they get information first, but if you're a fan, do you believe anything they say?
Anytime that Adam Schefter says something that isn't
when I say anything they say, I mean analysis wise. What's that?
Oh no, never. It just when I hear Schefter trying to do what I call a quantity report instead of a quality report, where Schefter's on TV and they're like, Schefter, what's going to happen with Matthew Stafford? And it's not newsworthy, but it's there is a sentiment you have to believe that the Rams will. I'm like, okay, he's just talking. That's how I feel. Ian, who wins this week?
Okay, overall, I thought this was a pretty good week. Good arguments on where Stafford lands. Jared, good arguments with the Giants. It makes sense. The whole tampering with the Raiders thing, what happened last year. Joe, also good. You guys agreed on what they should do with Levis. Also agreed on the tampering. The tush push, good arguments both ways. Yes and no for the banning. The Landry with the trade for Harold Landry last year. I think I have to go barely with Joe this week because, Jared, you did say at the end of the Landry argument they probably should have just traded him if they were going to cut him anyways, even though he wouldn't have got as high as a pick as everyone says on Twitter. So Joe wins by a whisker.
I don't even think they would have gotten a pick for it. I don't even know anyone would have done that. Who knows?
Great judging, Ian. Way to step in a pinch hit. Tough job. Someone's got to do it. Great work.
Unbelievable. Congratulations to Joe.
Very well done, guys.
On winning this week's edition of Jared.
Too friendly.
versus Joe. Stillman and Company, we continue. 102.5, 106 again.
The draft itself, right? I'm in the beginning phases of starting to look at players. Trenches are deep, right?
Yeah.
Are there other position or two that you look at this year and go, hey, they're pretty deep. I like what I see?
The D line stands out right away.
Right.
Particularly the edge. There's a lot of depth there in this draft.
Right.
I'd say the running backs, good draft. The running backs, I mean, good tight ends.
A lot of good ones.
Yeah, it's a good draft overall.
You do. You feel like it's a draft where we might get, and you might go, I actually might have 32 first-round grades on guys this year.
Yeah, and I think the depth is good too.
Yeah.
Especially at the D line position.
Gotcha.
You really don't get a feel until you set the board, and we did that called phase one where we set the board.
Gotcha.
Broke the meetings. But once you look up at the board, you say, wow, there's a lot of players up there.
Mike Borgonzi saying there's a lot of edge rushers, a lot of defensive linemen available in this year's draft. And coincidentally, maybe coincidentally, it just happens to be that the Titans set the board, saw all the edge rushers there, and then decided, yeah, we're going to move on from Harold Landry. Because when the Titans are giving Harold Landry permission to seek a trade, that doesn't mean that the Titans are going to trade Harold Landry. It means Harold Landry at $17.5 million will not be on the Titans next year. My gut tells me Arden Key will be released too, freeing up $25 million in money for the Titans to spend. Now, one thing that I think we need to be abundantly clear about, Mike Borgonzi saying there are a lot of edge rushers in the draft, and Mike Borgonzi having the ability to take Abdul Carter and getting rid of Harold Landry does not mean it will be as simple as Harold Landry out and Abdul Carter in. That is the old way of thinking about how the Titans built their team. Blake Bedingfield wrote about this at paulkaharski.com. And I really, truly, again, when I talk about the core values with which I operate a football team under, one of them is the draft is not about filling your needs. That's what free agency is. The draft is about getting the best players possible. Because if you don't draft the best players possible because you have a need, you end up taking J.C. Latham, who might be a good right tackle, over Brock Bowers, who's already a superstar. You see what I'm saying? So I do think Harold Landry and Arden Key will both be gone so that the Titans can look at the free agent board and say, hey, we need to spend money here. Quarterback, inside backer, if they want to go get Nick Bolton from the Chiefs, something like that. And with the knowledge that we can go get guys in free agency that can be starters if they have to, but we know we're probably going to take an edge rusher or two in the draft. But the idea that a lot of people are going to jump to, which is Harold Landry out, Abdul Carter in, I don't think the Titans have made that decision yet. And the reason I don't think the Titans have made that decision yet is because I believe the Titans want to trade the pick back. And once you trade the pick back, now you lose controlling who you take with that first pick. I believe they're looking at the Giants. That is the team they have circled that they believe they can work a deal out with in order to move back to 3 and still get an elite player. I do not believe that Mike Borgonzi has 32, like in that cut right there, 32 first-round grades. I would be stunned, given the fact that most people are reporting there's about 12 players that have first-round grades in this year's draft. But he's not going to know if he's taking Abdul Carter or not until he ends up figuring out what the Giants are going to do at quarterback, and it's pretty obvious the Giants are all in on Matthew Stafford. But I do think that they're telling us, hey, they're going to draft edge rushers this year. Maybe at number 1, maybe in the 4th round. They're going to draft edge rushers this year, and they're not going to pay an overpay for Harold Landry and for Arden Key. And I think that's good news. 615-737-1025. Speaking of good news for the Predators. We'll get to that next. I'm going to Company 125 The Game.
And that's going to do it. The Florida Panthers knock off the Nashville Predators here tonight. 4-1.
Yep, Predators stink, but that was good news, folks. Good news. They need to lose. According to MoneyPuck.com, the Nashville Predators have a 9.7% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And I am now, Ian, starting to brush up on my lottery picks.
Okay.
So Matthew Schaefer is the current number 1 prospect. He's a defenseman for the Erie Otters, and he seems to be an elite top pair defenseman. So that is the number 1 prospect. Now, you know me. I got to go center ice. Number 2 overall, James Hagens, the forward out of Boston College. He's a center, and he is legit. Number 3 is Michael Misa, who is apparently a Canadian top-line center. Good for him. I'll take one of those 2. Then after that, there's Porter Martone, who I don't think is a center. I think he's a winger. And then some more, whatever. I want one of those 3 guys. Specifically, I want Hagens or Misa. Period. First-line centers, I want them. And in order for the Predators to be able to pick one of those 2 guys, they're going to have to end up with a top 3 pick. Now, I have done this on tankathon.com, this lottery simmer, and almost every time I sim the lottery, the Predators end up with a 5th pick. And that means that if the Predators get the 5th pick, even though they have the 3rd worst record in the league, if the Predators get the 5th pick, that means they have absolutely no shot of getting one of those 3 guys. In fact, I keep clicking it, and they just got 3. Like, they've been picking 5th like 8 times, 2nd once, 3rd this time. Chicago number 1, San Jose number 2, Nashville number 3. And even then, I would accept it because I know both Chicago and San Jose would pass up the opportunity to take a center, and they would both want to take the defenseman. I think they're going to fire the coach at the end of the year, which they need to do. I mean, again, no disrespect to Burnett, whom I think is a good coach, but something's got to change. But they need a young guy like the Hagens kid out of BC. They need him to just give them some young juice and excitement to go with what is going to be returning an older team. And Ryan O'Reilly is coming up next on Smashville Live. And I do wonder, Barry Trotz was on the show yesterday, said he talked to the veteran players and told the veteran players, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. And the veteran players responded by saying, no, we want to be here. And I do wonder how the veteran players took that. So hopefully Max and Hal will ask Ryan O'Reilly about that, which is coming up next from Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue. Coming up next, Smashville Live, Max, Hal, and Ryan O'Reilly. And again, let's do one more lottery sim for the road.
Yes, please.
5th. 5th. Seattle 1, Philadelphia 2, San Jose 3, Chicago 4, Nashville 5. We'll do one more. 4th. Oh, God.
So close.
Keep losing. Keep losing and get that number 1 pick. That's it for us. Smashville Live's next. Stillman and Company. You can follow me on Twitter at Jared Stillman, Instagram at the Jared Stillman. We'll see you all tomorrow, too.